On the trestle connecting Ironspine City to the derelict metropolis, the roar of engines drew nearer, and additional reinforcements arrived aboard the hover vehicles in the sky. The 6 hover vehicles that had only circled above the steel jungle, too cautious to close in, finally gathered the courage with backup. They circled steadily closer to Lin Mu and his companions. "They're dead set on trapping us here." Chen Lu glanced up at the hovercraft overhead and frowned. "Get in the vehicle. Head deeper into the metropolis. The denser the steel jungle grows, the harder it will be for them to bring their numerical advantage to bear." Lin Mu made a quick decision. Everyone rushed toward the off-road vehicle. Shi Ming clambered into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel firmly. Shi Yong climbed into the passenger seat as usual, while Shi Gan flipped upward and perched himself on the vehicle's roof. Wen Wantong and Su Qingli climbed into the back row one after another. Chen Lu was the last to get in. She planned to wait for Lin Mu to board and sit beside him, yet she noticed Lin Mu remained standing outside. "Senior?" Chen Lu leaned halfway out of the vehicle and called out. Lin Mu stood beside the wrecked hover armored vehicle, one hand resting on its hull, seemingly examining the ruined craft. This hover vehicle had fared best among the 6. The other 5 had either exploded or crumpled into scrap metal, though its thruster had been smashed through by Lin Mu's axe. The body structure remained largely intact. The gear and fist emblem of Ironspine City stood clear on the side armor plate, and dried blood stained the cockpit. "Brother Lin, this vehicle's broken, isn't it?" Shi Gan poked his bald head down from the roof, confused. "It is damaged," Lin Mu nodded. He then slapped the hull, and the entire hover-armored vehicle vanished out of sight, stowed inside his portable storage backpack. Shi Gan blinked, utter bewilderment etched across his bald scalp. "If there's space in the backpack, we might as well take it. Who knows if we can repair it later," Lin Mu said casually. He then turned and walked toward the off-road vehicle. "Brother Lin, you've thought of everything. If we can fix this thing, we'll have our own air support." Shi Gan suddenly understood, so excited he slapped the roof hard. "Don't slam the roof. I'm right underneath," Shi Ming shouted, leaning out from the driver's seat. "My bad, my hand slipped." Shi Gan quickly pulled his hand back and scratched his bald head sheepishly. Lin Mu hopped into the back of the off-road vehicle. Chen Lu moved over and sat closely beside him, adjusting her posture to settle comfortably. Lin Mu shook his head helplessly and let her be. "Senior, do you really think we can fix that hover vehicle?" Chen Lu tilted her head, resting her head lightly against his jaw. "I'm not certain, but in a world capable of building mobile metropolises, repairing hover vehicles can't be overly difficult. Even if we can't fix it ourselves, we might find someone who can." Lin Mu steadied her with one hand, worried she might slip as the vehicle jolted over rough ground. "Even if we can't find a mechanic, we can strip it for spare parts." Spare parts from an official Ironspine City hover armored vehicle would fetch a high price out in the wasteland. Shi Yong twisted around from the front seat. "Finally, a sensible thought from you," Shi Ming said as he started the engine. "I've always been sharp," Shi Yong retorted indignantly. The off-road vehicle rumbled to life, twisting and turning along rust-strewn, rubble-covered streets, heading deeper into the abandoned metropolis. Overhead, overpasses and pipelines grew increasingly dense. Blood mist drifted slowly through the narrow alleyways, coating everything in a faint crimson haze. The roar of engines behind them confirmed that a large detachment of the security force had entered the derelict metropolis, closing in fast. Yet the treacherous terrain of this steel jungle hampered their pursuit. Their armored vehicles and off-road trucks scraped against debris in the cramped streets, punctuated by the clang of metal and the driver's shouts of frustration. At that moment, a notification popped up on Chen Lu's interface. She had set an alert to trigger whenever her livestream chat surged with messages, and it activated now. "What's going on? Are viewers complaining again that we won't turn on high definition?" Chen Lu wondered. She opened the notification, and her eyes widened instantly. "Senior, everyone, check the live streams. Pull up the stream for Listener of Wind," Chen Lu exclaimed. Lin Mu, Wen Wantong, and Su Qingli opened their interfaces and loaded the livestream feeds. The 3 Shi brothers did the same. 10 small stream windows appeared, and the 2 feeds focused on the Listener of Wind and the Phoenix. Blurry long-distance footage revealed an identical landscape of tangled steel jungles, derelict metal skyscrapers, crisscrossing overpasses and pipelines, half-collapsed steel frameworks. It was the same abandoned metropolis where their own group traveled. "They've entered this metropolis too?" Chen Lu pointed at the screen. "Judging by their position markers, they're on the opposite side. We entered from the east. They must have come in through the west," Wen Wantong analyzed thoughtfully. The chat box exploded with messages. "Whoa, Both Listener of Wind and Phoenix have fled into the abandoned metropolis. Wait a second, could they be inside the exact same metropolis as Family Squad? It looks identical. Compare the steel structures to Family Squad's footage. 666. Two groups chased by different mobile cities, and they end up hiding in the same abandoned metropolis? What an incredible plot twist. The chat buzzed with discussion, but Chen-Lu could no longer focus on the messages. She caught a distant rumble coming from the far side of the metropolis. A low, rhythmic thunder, each vibration sending a faint tremor through the ground. The footsteps of a mobile city. Can anyone else hear that? Chen-Lu asked. We hear it. It must be the mobile city hunting Listener of Wind and Phoenix. When Wantong peered through the window toward the metropolis's far edge, they could not see what lay on the other side from here. The metropolis stretched far too wide. Yet they all recognized that mechanical roar and the deep, resonant tremors. This is interesting. Two mobile cities chasing their targets into the same abandoned metropolis. Do you think they'll fight each other? Ming gripped the steering wheel, a hint of malicious amusement in his tone. Mobile cities prioritize eliminating interlopers from outside this world, not warring with one another. It's far more likely they will join forces to trap us here. When Wantong shook her head. That makes things even worse then. Shiyong scratched the back of his head. Not necessarily. Though both mobile cities share the same objective, they are separate entities. Ironspine City and the other mobile city likely lack unified command. With both confined to this limited zone, gaps in coordination may emerge, Lin Mu said. His gaze remained fixed on the livestream feeds as his mind raced to assess the situation. Chen-Lu gasped suddenly. Senior, Godslayer Squad. Zhao Hao of Godslayer Squad. He's heading straight for us. Chen-Lu pointed urgently at her display. Everyone switched to the Godslayer Squad livestream. Unlike the other teams, Godslayer broadcast in sharp, close-up, high definition, leaving nothing hidden. On screen, Zhao Hao sat in a stolen modified off-road vehicle. A ruthless, confident grin spread across his face. His two subordinates followed behind him as always, a man clutching a blood-stained axe, and a woman twirling a short blade between her fingers. The off-road vehicle raced across the wasteland, churning up clouds of dust. Its destination, this abandoned mobile metropolis. The livestream chat erupted. Zhao Hao is really coming. High definition is amazing. You can see every detail. That expression means he's here to settle scores. Ha ha. I bet Zhao Hao spotted Ironspine City moving and followed it. For context, Zhao Hao was hunting monsters for experience out on the wasteland when he noticed a mobile city advancing this way. He checked the live streams, saw Ironspine City pursuing Family Squad inside this abandoned metropolis, and immediately turned to intercept them. Wow, what a grudge to deter just to hunt them down. We're doomed. Family Squad is trapped, enemy pursuers ahead, and Zhao Hao closing in from behind. It's not just a grudge. Zhao Hao wants to prove Godslayer Squad deserves the #1 title. Zhao Hao, Family Squad, I'm coming for you. Can't wait to watch Zhao Hao crush Family Squad. I hate how they always stay hidden. This is spectacular. 3 factions converging on the abandoned metropolis. Far more exciting than any elimination match. Not just 3 factions. Add the mobile city pursuers. This will be a 5-way free-for-all. Selling snacks and drinks up front. The massive battle is about to begin. Zhao Hao was clearly reading the chat. He laughed openly, unmasked arrogance and hostility plain on his face. Family Squad, I know you're watching. Zhao Hao spoke, seemingly to himself. In truth, he addressed every viewer tuning in. And above all, he spoke directly to Family Squad. Do you think hiding inside the abandoned metropolis will save you? Those steel ruins might block others, but they won't stop me. Stay ready. I'll arrive soon. Zhao Hao raised his voice, brimming with confidence over his imminent victory. His 2 subordinates shouted alongside him. You're absolutely right, boss. Today, Family Squad will cease to exist. It's time for a new team to claim first place. Zhao Hao laughed loudly and slammed the steering wheel. The off-road vehicle accelerated, charging toward the abandoned metropolis. As Zhao Hao's threats played out on the livestream, Lin Mu processed the experience points he had just earned. Hostile armed personnel eliminated ×10. Experience gained. 20 × 10 is equal to 200 unsettled. Settle experience points? Yes/no yes. Experience critical triggered. Active bond target. Chen-Lu, favorability. 64. Critical multiplier this roll. 20x random. Base experience. 200 experience after critical. For 1,000 experience points entered his account. Yet it was nowhere near enough for Lin Mu to level up. It seemed the higher his level grew, the more experience each upgrade required. Experience sharing activated. Available recipients: Wen Wantong, Chen Lu, Su Qingli. Lin Mu did not hesitate and selected Su Qingli once more. Recipient selected: Su Qingli. Bond target: Su Qingli receives shared experience. For 1000 by 20, experience gained, 800. At the same time, the numbers on Su Qingli's interface flickered. Combined with leftover experience from before, she leveled up. LV.9, LV.10, level reward. All stats +2, current level, LV.10. Strength, 22-24, agility, 23-25, constitution, 24-26, spirit, 63-65, I've reached level 10, Su Qingli said calmly. She could feel the silver sword core within her dantian solidify further, nourished by her spirit power. Even with her naturally reserved temperament, a flicker of joy stirred inside her. When Wantong settled her experience next, she had only taken down one enemy, small gains, yet every bit counted. Even with a critical roll, however, the total experience fell short of a level up. Chen Lu, on the other hand, had eliminated 3 enemies. Luck favored her, and her critical proxy triggered a massive 50x multiplier. She leveled up immediately. Hostile armed personnel eliminated ×3, experience gained. 20 times 3 is equal to 60 unsettled. Settle experience points? Yes/no yes. Settling experience points. Bond talent, critical proxy experience, activated. Current bond target favorability, 64, critical multiplier range, 164, critical multiplier this roll, 50x random, base experience, 60, experience after critical, 3000, experience split. Talent holder Lin Mu receives, 1500, bond target Chen Lu receives, 1500, player level increased, LV.12, LV.13 upgrade requirement, 1400, level reward, all stats +3. Current level, LV.13, strength, 2932, agility, 3134, constitution, 3033, spirit, 3134, 50 times. Did everyone see that? I told you Lady Luck favors me. Chen Lu raised her hands and cheered. Of course, you're the lucky one, our most capable member. When Wantong smiled and pressed her hand lightly on Chen Lu's bouncing head. Shi Ming and Shi Yong in the front seat listened in confusion, unsure what Chen Lu meant by Lady Luck. Still, they knew better than to ask questions about private matters and chose to stay quiet. The off-road vehicle pushed deeper through the steel jungle. Buildings crowded closer, and overhead overpasses and pipelines nearly blotted out the sky. Up ahead, a checkpoint came into view. Discarded trucks had been parked sideways to block the street, leaving only a narrow passage barely wide enough for one vehicle to pass. Crudely painted across the truck beds were the words, Black Iron Gang, alongside a rough symbol. 7 or 8 armed men stood guard at the checkpoint. Some carried shotguns, others iron pipes, and homemade grenades hung from the belts of several. Their attire was ragtag, leather jackets, patchwork overalls, and one man wrapped in animal hide. Every pair of eyes held the ferocity of people who survived year-round in the wasteland. Another checkpoint. Brother Lin, should we plow straight through again? Shi Ming frowned and hovered his foot over the gas pedal. Wait, Lin Mu spoke up to stop him. Shi Ming eased off the accelerator, and the vehicle slowed. They've occupied this area for a long time. They must know far more about this abandoned metropolis than we do. We might gather useful intelligence. Lin Mu studied the checkpoint guards calmly. Great idea. Intelligence is exactly what we lack. We need to learn the layout of this metropolis, safe routes, dangerous zones, and any clues about the metropolis core. Locals will know. Chen Lu agreed immediately. Shi Ming nodded and slowly drove toward the checkpoint. The Black Iron Gang members spotted the approaching off-road vehicle and exchanged glances. Their leader was a burly middle-aged man with a fleshy face. He wore an oil-stained leather vest, revealing thick arms tattooed with coiled serpents. He slung his shotgun over one shoulder, strode to the middle of the road, and held up a hand to signal them to stop. Stop! Stop right there, the burly man roared. Shi Ming pressed the brakes, and the vehicle halted less than 5 meters from the checkpoint. The gang leader walked to the front of the off-road vehicle, scanning every corner before fixing his gaze on Shi Ming in the driver's seat. His eyes sharp and calculating. Outsiders, you know the rules. He tapped the hood with the barrel of his shotgun, greed evident in his tone. What rules? Shi Ming replied, playing along. A toll. This stretch of road belongs to the Black Iron Gang. Pay to pass. The burly man spoke as if stating an undeniable fact. His underlings shouted in support. That's right. No payment, no passage. This vehicle looks nice. You could leave it instead. Who's riding inside? Let us see them. Shermang was about to reply when Shurgan poked his bald head over the edge of the roof. He had been sitting cross-legged on the luggage rack and leaned forward at the commotion. What's going on, brother? Shurgan called down from above. The burly gang leader instinctively looked upward. He laid eyes on the gleaming bald head. His expression shifted instantly from arrogant to stunned, then spiraled into terror. His jaw dropped open, and he stumbled backward 2 steps, his trembling finger pointed at Shurgan. The bald man on the roof. It's them. It's really them. His voice cracked. Shurgan blinked, thoroughly confused. Us? Do I know you? Shurgan pointed at himself. The gang leader paid him no answer. He spun and fled, shouting at the top of his lungs as he ran. It's that group. The ones who took down 6 hover vehicles. They're here. Run. The other Black Iron gang guards froze for a split second, then scattered like startled cats. What? Them. The group from the footage who destroyed 6 official security force hover armored vehicles? 6 full military hovercraft, all wrecked. Run, don't let them set their sights on us. Within 10 seconds, the checkpoint stood empty. Discarded weapons and spinning metal barrels littered the ground. Confusion washed over Shurgan. He scratched his bald head and turned toward the others inside the vehicle. Why are they running? Shurgan asked sincerely. I'd like to know too. Chen Lu blinked, equally baffled. Word of our fight against the hover vehicles must have spread through the Black Iron Gang's internal communications, when Wonton quickly deduced. Right? Before we entered the abandoned metropolis, we raided their camp, remember? Those hover vehicles chased right on our heels. We took down all 6 of them. Their camp wasn't far away, so they must have captured footage of us back then. Shuyong twisted around from the front seat, speaking with a sudden flash of realization. So they think we're some kind of monsters. Chen Lu's expression shifted from blank bewilderment to exasperation. Taking out 6 hover-armored vehicles is no small matter out in the wasteland. The regular troops from Ironspine City are seen as the peak of power among scavengers, and hover vehicles stand at the very top of that tier. We wiped 6 out in one go. To them, we might as well be celestial warriors, Su Qingli analyzed calmly. Celestial warriors? Do celestial warriors look as handsome as me? Shurgan rested a hand on his bald head atop the vehicle's roof, speaking in complete earnest. Everyone stared wordlessly at Shurgan up there, unsure whether to marvel at his confidence or call him shameless. Enough banter. Lin Mu shook his head helplessly. Chen Lu jumped down from Lin Mu's side of the vehicle, planted her hands on her hips, and scanned her surroundings. Her gaze swept over the discarded weapons strewn about, and her eyes suddenly lit up. Senior, should we take these firearms with us? Chen Lu asked. Take whatever you want, Lin Mu replied indifferently. Cheerfully, Chen Lu began gathering equipment, stuffing everything she found into her backpack. Then she spotted a man huddled inside a large iron cage welded together from steel rebar. He was a man wearing tattered patched leather, his hair and beard matted and tangled, looking like a scavenger who'd wandered the wasteland for decades. Senior, there's someone here. Chen Lu pointed toward the cage. Lin Mu immediately pushed open the car door and stepped out, with the others following close behind. When the bearded man inside the cage saw the group approaching, he shrank backward, pressing his spine tight against the steel bars on the far side. Don't kill me. I've got nothing to do with the Black Iron Gang. I just snuck underground without paying the toll, so they locked me up. The bearded man waved his hands frantically. Sneaked underground? What underground? Lin Mu caught the word sharply and pressed him. The man paused, then realized these fearsome strangers were likely visiting the abandoned metropolis for the first time, with no knowledge of the local terrain. He quickly stretched a finger toward the fractured ground not far from the checkpoint. Look over there, that rift. Climb down, and you'll reach the underground district. Everyone followed the direction of his finger. To the right of the checkpoint, the street surface had been torn open by either an earthquake or an explosion, forming a massive gash. Metal panels curled upward along the rift's edge, revealing pitch-black space below. Tangled pipes and passageways could faintly be seen within. The mobile metropolis had an intricate network of facilities underground originally. Maintenance tunnels, drainage systems, energy pipelines, storage zones, all buried beneath the surface. Normally, these areas could only be accessed through dedicated entrances sealed with password locks or authority verification, impossible for ordinary people to open. But this collapse split the ground wide open, exposing the underground district directly. It's a natural entry point, no clearance required to get inside. The bearded man explained, gesturing at the rift. Is this the only entrance like this? Lin Mu pursued. Of course not. There are others. Some ripped open by tremors when the metropolis fell, others blasted apart by crews from other mobile metropolises. Blasted open by other mobile cities? Chen-Lu widened her eyes. Exactly. The underground district holds plenty of valuable salvage, discarded machinery, functional spare parts, cables, and piping that can all be traded for credits out on the wasteland. But none of that draws mobile metropolises here. What brings them running is the core matrix of the abandoned city. The man lowered his voice instinctively. The core matrix is the heart of any mobile metropolis. Every walking city relies on it to operate. Inside each core matrix lie countless city hearts. Even a single one can buy enough wealth to last a person a lifetime. This metropolis is dead, yet its core matrix remains intact, and the city hearts are still hidden somewhere deep within the underground district. Nobody knows exactly where, though. The location of a mobile metropolis's core matrix is its highest classified secret. Everyone who knew the truth died when this city fell. Countless expeditions from other mobile metropolises have combed the underground district top to bottom over the decades, yet none found the core matrix. Us scavengers keep venturing here, clinging to the dream that someone might stumble onto it and strike unimaginable fortune, the bearded man sighed. Chen-Lu's eyes lit up, and she turned to look at Lin Mu. One fact was clear now. The core matrix of this abandoned mobile metropolis was still somewhere within these ruins, undiscovered by anyone. Lin Mu walked up to the cage, closed his hand around the rusted iron padlock, and squeezed gently. Crack! The lock shattered into fragments in his palm, clattering onto the ground. The bearded man stared blankly at the broken shards, his atoms apple-bobbing. It was a solid iron lock, not some flimsy trinket. This man had crushed it as easily as breaking a biscuit, without so much as a change in expression. Come out. Lin Mu pulled open the cage door, his tone flat. The bearded man scrambled out of the cage, glancing again at the broken lock and swallowing hard. He'd survived the wasteland for more than a decade and seen everything. Augmented fighters, bounty hunters, even regular soldiers from mobile metropolises. But he'd never met anyone who could crush an iron lock barehanded. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. The bearded man bowed repeatedly toward Lin Mu's back. Lin Mu did not turn around, simply waving a hand to dismiss his gratitude. Beside the off-road vehicle, the group gathered to discuss their next move. Do you think there really are city hearts down in the underground district? Chen-Lu leaned against the vehicle's hood, her eyes bright with anticipation. The core matrix hasn't been found, so the city hearts must still be there. The problem is, decades have passed. Elite search teams from dozens of mobile metropolises turned up nothing. What chance do outsiders like us have? When Wantong pushed up her glasses, reasoning rationally. Luck. Seniors always had amazing luck. That's how he got his talent, right? Chen-Lu said confidently. She avoided naming Lin Mu's talent outright with the Sure brothers present, but her meaning was plain. Only someone incredibly fortunate could awaken an SSS-grade talent. You make me sound like a lucky charm. Lin Mu shook his head with a faint smile. No, you're a living koi fish. Chen-Lu corrected him seriously. Even if we find nothing, the underground will let us avoid Iron Spine City's search parties. Su Qingli gazed toward the fractured ground. I agree. Whether we locate the city hearts or not, heading underground is our most logical option right now, when Wantong nodded. The three Sure brothers exchanged glances, then all turned toward Lin Mu. We'll go wherever Lin Mu leads us. Shermeng slammed a fist against his chest. We'll follow you anywhere, above ground or below. Shiyong added. One problem, though, we can't take the vehicle underground. Those tunnels are far too narrow for the off-roader. Shirgan scratched his bald head. Shermeng strode over to the vehicle and slapped its hull. The entire off-road vehicle vanished instantly, stowed inside his storage backpack. Let's go. Lin Mu stepped forward, heading toward the rift. The fissure stretched 4 to 5 meters wide. Metal plating had been torn upward by immense force along its edges. Rust coated the surface, yet the sharp cuts from the rupture remained visible. A sloped path descended into the darkness. The gradient was gentle, but thick rust and loose gravel covered the surface, making careful footing essential. Further down, tangled pipes and branching tunnels loomed in the shadow. A cold, moldy wind drifted upward from the depths, making Chen-Lu shudder. It feels eerie down here. Chen-Lu rubbed her arms and subconsciously stepped closer to Lin Mu. Underground space abandoned for decades. Gloom is to be expected. When Wantong pulled flashlights she'd purchased in Tokyo from her pack and handed them out to everyone, multiple beams of light flickered on, cutting through the darkness of the rift and casting shifting spots of light across the tangled pipes. The bearded man stood some distance away, watching Shermeng make the entire vehicle disappear. His eyes bulged, his jaw hanging open wide enough to fit a fist. The vehicle, it's gone? That huge truck just vanished. He rubbed his eyes, unable to believe what he'd witnessed. Then he watched the man who crushed the iron lock jump down into the rift, followed by the women and the three muscular brothers. The bearded man stood frozen, his expression shifting repeatedly. He'd ventured underground many times before, sometimes paying the toll when he still had credits, sometimes sneaking in penniless. He knew exactly how dangerous the underground district was: dormant security automatons, blood beasts that could emerge from any shadow, tunnels prone to sudden collapse. Every trip was a gamble with death. Each time he swore he'd never return, yet the urge always dragged him back. His family, 2 generations now, had chased a secret buried here. These strangers were mysterious and feared, yet they did not seem malicious. After all, the man who crushed the lock could have ignored him entirely, yet he'd set him free. They'd fought the regular troops of Ironspine City, so they were not aligned with any mobile metropolis. Outsiders, yet powerful enough to overpower a city's formal military. This was likely the only chance he would ever get. The bearded man gritted his teeth, stamped his foot, and hurried toward the rift. "Sir, wait a moment." Lin Mu was steadying Wen Wantong as she stepped over a jagged rock along the rift's edge. He turned at the shout. The rest of the group halted as well. Several flashlight beams locked onto the bearded man's face, forcing him to lift a hand to shield his eyes. You're looking for the core matrix too?" He lowered his hand, tension evident in his voice. Lin Mu studied him, offering no immediate reply. "We are searching for the core matrix, yes. What does that have to do with you? Weren't you imprisoned by the Black Iron Gang? Why are you interested?" Chun Lu leaned out from behind Lin Mu. The bearded man hesitated. At last, he gritted his teeth, as if wagering everything he possessed on a single gamble. "I hold a clue to the core matrix's location." "You have a clue?" Chun Lu's eyes widened. She stepped out from behind Lin Mu, sizing the bearded man up and down. "I thought dozens of elite search teams from mobile metropolises came here for decades and found nothing. The Black Iron Gangs held this territory for ages and turned up empty-handed. How could you have a lead? Are you lying to us?" Chen Lu questioned skeptically. "I'm not lying. Every word is true." He waved his hands frantically, sweat beading on his forehead. "Then tell us, where did you get this clue?" Chen Lu folded her arms, interrogating him. The bearded man let out a bitter laugh, complex emotions swirling in his eyes. "My name is Victor Marchino. My grandfather was the chief mechanic of Steelbone City. The location of the core matrix is a metropolis's highest secret. Yet the chief mechanic could never be kept in the dark. When disaster struck Steelbone City, my grandfather passed the core matrix's location to my father, who handed it down to me. I've tried to reach the core matrix for years to retrieve the city hearts. But there's one stretch along the path that is impossibly dangerous, with no way to bypass it. I cannot seek aid from other mobile metropolises. Those greedy officials would seize the clue and leave me with nothing. I dare not trust the outlaws of the Black Iron Gang either. They would rob me of the information and kill me to eliminate loose ends. I only dared hope when I met you today. You possess strength greater than anyone I have ever encountered. And you do not strike me as cruel people. I'm willing to take this gamble." A strained smile tugged at Victor's face. Chen Lu glanced toward Lin Mu, signaling for his decision. Lin Mu's gaze remained fixed on Victor. "What are your terms?" Lin Mu asked bluntly. Victor's face lit up, hope surging through him. "If we find the core matrix, I only ask for one city heart. Just one. You may keep all the rest. A single city heart will earn me enough wealth to settle down safely inside a mobile metropolis." Victor spoke nervously. Lin Mu weighed the offer silently. A core matrix capable of powering an entire mobile metropolis would surely hold many city hearts. One as payment was an acceptable price. He glanced at Wen Wantong first, who gave a subtle nod. Then Su Qingli, who remained calm and offered no objection. Chen Lu flashed him a thumbs up without hesitation. "Agreed," Lin Mu nodded. Victor froze for a split second before his face broke into unbridled joy. "Thank you, sir. Thank you all. I, Victor Marchino, swear on my family's honor to guide you truthfully. If I deceive you, may the blood beasts tear me apart." His voice trembled with excitement. He speaks so formally. He really does carry the air of a fallen noble. Chun Lu muttered quietly. His grandfather was chief mechanic. He received a proper education growing up, Su Qingli said softly. "That makes sense. Lead the way, Victor." Chun Lu nodded and called out to him. "Right away. Follow me, everyone." Victor hurried forward. A scraggly bearded scavenger now joined their group, walking at the front with urgent strides. They soon descended into the rift. The tunnels beneath were far wider than anyone expected. This had once been the main maintenance thoroughfare of the underground district. Anti-slip metal plating lined the ground, and corroded, Fractured pipelines ran along the walls. Faint traces of their orderly original arrangement could still be seen. This way, this passage leads toward the storage zones. It's the fastest route, and safer than the main transit tunnels. Several sections of the main route have collapsed and are impassable, Victor explained as he led them onward. He paused at every junction, glancing left and right, running fingers over faded numbered markers on the walls to confirm their bearing. Storage zones? Is there anything valuable left there? Chen-Lu peered around curiously. All worthwhile salvage was carted away long ago. For decades, scavengers stripped every portable asset bit by bit. Only oversized machinery they could not move remains, along with. Victor paused, his tone growing heavy. Security automatons. Security automatons? Wen Wantong frowned. Yes, Steelbone City fell, but the underground district's security system ran on independent power sources, and many units still function. Automated gun emplacements and patrol robots. Most have degraded beyond repair, but a handful still carry out their programmed duties. The storage zone holds the highest concentration of active automatons, since vital supplies were housed here once. Victor sounded faintly proud as he continued. Don't worry, though. Us scavengers who survived down here have worked out ways to evade them. You just follow my lead. Hide and wait until they complete their patrol cycles and retract into the walls. We get roughly 3 minutes to pass safely once they retreat. It's not much time, but enough to cross this stretch. Hiding and waiting for them to pull back? That's such a passive tactic. Chen-Lu wrinkled her nose disapprovingly. It may seem timid, but it keeps us alive. As long as we avoid triggering sensors, the automatons cannot detect us. If you want to survive long out here, caution is everything. Victor explained the scavenger code of survival. Quiet, Lin Mu cut him off abruptly. A faint whir of machinery echoed from deeper in the tunnel's darkness. Moments later, red scanning lights flickered along the wall. Then a machine gun turret extended outward from the masonry. It was no ordinary firearm, a rotary cannon with 6 barrels mounted on a flexible mechanical arm, its base anchored firmly inside the wall. Hide immediately. Don't let its sensors lock onto you. Its fire control system is operational. It will open fire the moment it acquires a target. Victor hissed urgently, scrambling to duck behind a wall out of long habit. Yet halfway into cover, he witnessed something unbelievable. Lin Mu charged straight ahead. He moved so fast he left a blurred trail. Bullets chased his afterimage and slammed into the wall, sending sparks flying the instant the rotary cannon opened fire. Then he launched a powerful kick. The 6-barrel turret, base and all, ripped free from the wall, hurtling across the tunnel and shattering against the opposite surface. You can come forward now. It's safe. Lin Mu waved the group onward. Victor's mouth gaped open wide enough to fit 2 fists. He stood frozen until Chen-Lu skipped past him, pulling him back to his senses. Coming. Victor scrambled to catch up, his mind replaying what he had just seen. One kick. Just a single kick. That turret's shell was forged from military-grade armored steel. He'd watched this exact model of emplacement shred an armored pickup truck out in the wasteland. Yet it could not withstand one strike from this man. Sir, what level augmented fighter are you? Victor trailed behind Lin Mu, unable to hold back his curiosity. Augmented fighter? I'm not one. Lin Mu glanced back and replied casually. Not an augmented fighter? Victor's smile froze. He wanted to press further, but met Lin Mu's calm, unwavering gaze, and swallowed the question. Best not to ask what he had no business knowing. Whether he was augmented or not, his strength was undeniable. Victor could almost taste the hope of finding the core matrix. This way, everyone. Ahead lies the central hub of the storage zone. Once we cross it and follow a maintenance tunnel, we'll reach the deeper levels of the underground district. Victor said excitedly, hurrying to the front of the group, nearly breaking into a run. Victor, their guide, strode ahead at a brisk pace. He had spent half his life navigating these underground districts. He knew every safe path and every danger zone like the back of his hand. Yet it did not take long for him to realize that all his hard-earned experience seemed useless against Lin Mu and his companions. There's a patrol robot inside that pipe ahead. We need to take a detour. Before Victor even finished speaking, Lin Mu punched straight through the pipe's outer wall, reached in, dragged the patrol robot out, and crushed its sensor with his bare hand. What were you saying? Lin Mu brushed dust off his palms. And nothing at all, Victor stammered. They walked a short distance further when 2 mechanical tentacles suddenly descended from the tunnel ceiling. High-speed cutting saws whirled at the tip of each limb. Victor instinctively stepped backward, his mouth opening to yell duck, only to watch the 3 Sure brothers grab steel pipes, torn loose from the wall, and charge forward shouting. Shi Meng swung his pipe to deflect the saw on the left tentacle. Shi Yong wrapped his arms around the limb in a bear hug, and Shi Gan leaped onto the other tentacle, pummeling it repeatedly with fists the size of casseroles. The sight of three burly men battling two mechanical tentacles lacked grace, but it was devastatingly efficient. In less than 30 seconds, the tentacles lay broken into scattered components across the ground. This thing packs quite a punch. Shi Gan jumped down from the wreckage. He paid no mind to the machine oil coating his hands or the black smudge smeared across his bald head. Way more satisfying than lifting weights back at the gym. Shi Yong tossed aside the twitching half of the tentacle he had been holding. Victor glanced at the three brothers, then down at his own thin arms, swallowing the warning he had been about to voice to take a detour. They ventured deeper and passed an abandoned power chamber. Chen Lu swept her flashlight beam across a shadowed pile of objects in the corner, and the pile stirred. Three jet black beetle-shaped machines crawled out of the darkness, each as large as a wash basin, fitted with sharp cutting pincers on their fronts. Cleanser drones. They spray corrosive fluid that can eat straight through armored steel. Victor shouted urgently, but Su Qingli twisted her wrist, and her iron sword streaked forward like a flash of light. All three cleanser drones were pierced simultaneously. Sparks crackled, and they collapsed motionless on the floor. Did they manage to spray the corrosive fluid? Su Qingli recalled her sword, her tone calm. And no, Victor replied blankly. Then there is no harm done. Su Qingli stepped past him. Victor stood frozen for 2 seconds, then slapped his own face hard. It dawned on him all at once. These people had no need for his survival expertise. His only purpose was to lead the way, nothing more. Victor, how much farther? Chen Lu asked, brimming with eagerness. Almost there, just around that bend. According to records left by my grandfather, the entrance to the core matrix lies within a great hall in this sector. Victor pointed forward. A hall? What kind of hall? Shi Meng pressed for details. The Maintenance Dispatch Hall, one of the largest open spaces in Steelbone City's underground zones. It used to serve as the hub coordinating all underground repair operations, around half the size of a football pitch. Victor gestured with his hands. The group rounded the bend, and the tunnel opened up. A colossal half-open metal gate came into view, 3 stories tall, heavily rusted, yet still imposing. Dim light seeped through the gap, revealing the vast space beyond. Victor halted before the gate and turned to face the party, excitement fading into solemn gravity. It's in there. Gentlemen, before we go in, I must tell you something important. Are there hordes of guard machines inside? Linmu glanced at him. It's more than that. After Steelbone City fell, every nomadic city sought the core matrix. A well-equipped regular army from Grey Tower City spent 3 months combing the underground zones. They suspected this hall housed the core matrix entrance. Victor let out a bitter laugh. And then, Chen Lu urged him onward. They spent 3 days clearing out all the guard machines inside at the cost of more than half their troops. Yet they found nothing. Victor spread his hands. They scanned every wall and floor with metal detectors and sonar. They even blasted open numerous suspicious areas with explosives, yet uncovered nothing. In the end, Grey Tower City's commander concluded this was merely an ordinary maintenance dispatch hall and withdrew his men. No nomadic city has targeted this place ever since. The city's automated defense system redeployed guard machines inside the hall, and they have remained operational to this day. But my grandfather's records are clear. The entrance to the core matrix is inside this hall. They failed to find it because they never knew where to look. I understand. We just need to clear out the guard machines here, correct? Linmu nodded. No need to clear all of them. Only the machines in that small section over there. Victor waved his hands hastily. You're certain? Can we trust your grandfather's records? Chen Lu sounded skeptical. I swear on my family's honor. My grandfather would never lie to his descendants. Victor grew flustered, his beard trembling. All right, we'll take your word for it. Chen Lu waved him off. Just that area, right? Leave it to the 3 of us. Shi Meng slammed his chest. Those mechanical tentacles earlier were just a warm-up. We've been aching for a proper fight. Shi Yong rolled up his sleeves. My steel pipe is ready to go. Shi Gan twirled the pipe he had picked up. He misjudged its balance and nearly struck his bald head, scrambling to catch it. Shi brothers, handle the patrol mechs and ground sentries on the left. Professor Wen and Fairy Su will provide long-range support. Prioritize eliminating the spider drones hanging from the ceiling and wall-mounted turrets. Linmu quickly assigned roles. Understood, when Wantong responded. Su Qingli gave a nod. What about me? Chen Lu pointed at herself. Keep an eye on Victor. Make sure stray gunfire doesn't hit him, Linmu said concisely. Mission accepted. Stick close to me, Victor. I've got your back. Chen Lu tilted her chin toward him. Thank you, Miss Lu. Thank you. Victor bowed repeatedly. He had no idea how capable this twin-tailed young woman really was, but anyone traveling alongside such formidable figures could not be ordinary. Lin Mu pushed open the massive half-shut metal gate. The shrill scraping alerted every guard machine within the hall. Spider-shaped drones hanging from the ceiling twisted toward them all at once. Wall-mounted automated turrets hummed as they charged energy, their six-barreled gun barrels spinning up. Patrol mechs on six mechanical legs marched in from all directions, metal limbs clanging against the floor. Attack! Lin Mu charged forward first. The three Shi brothers followed close behind, roaring as they dove into the swarm of machines. Shi Ming wrapped his arms around a patrol mech's leg and heaved it onto its side. Shi Yong smashed a grounded sentry robot relentlessly with his steel pipe. Shi Gan leaped onto another patrol mech, clamped his legs around its armor, seized its sensor array, and twisted hard. A sharp crack echoed as the sensor bent into a mangled coil. When Wantong fired successive air shots, each round striking a spider drone clinging to the ceiling. The hanging machines crashed to the ground as scrap before they could descend. Su Qingli's flying sword weaved through the machine horde. Silver light flashed, and turrets on the walls erupted in sparks, breaking free and crashing down. Lin Mu dealt with the toughest heavy units. He punched through the front armor of a heavy sentry, reached inside to tear out its circuit board, and tossed it aside. He kicked a turret aiming at Shi Gan hard enough to send the whole emplacement, along with a section of wall, flying away. Victor, stay close. Chen Lu gripped her machete. Victor stumbled as she dragged him along, his heart hammering in his throat. A broken sentry chassis sent flying by Shi Yong whizzed past Victor's scalp. He flinched and slowed his pace instinctively. What are you scared of? Keep up. Chen Lu shot him a glare over her shoulder. Why yes. Victor hurried to follow. Chen Lu did not stay idle. She activated her ghostly aura. Though tasked with protecting Victor, she cut down any stray machine crossing her path. A spider drone, damaged by one Wantong shot, but still functional, wriggled on the ground. Chen Lu charged forward and slashed it, sending sparks showering outward. Quit squirming. She shook her blade with a hint of pride. At last, they reached the corner on the right. Chen Lu pushed Victor toward the wall and turned, standing guard with her machete raised. Get to work, she said without looking back. Victor drew a deep breath and pulled a worn polished metal slab from his coat, etched with a long string of mechanical codes. The maintenance dispatch hall was not merely an operations hub, it also functioned as a repair station. The floor was assembled from interlocking metal panels, swapped out individually whenever sections sustained damage. The entrance to the core matrix lay concealed beneath one slightly discolored floor panel. Victor knelt, tracing the nearly invisible seam around the panel with his finger, and soon located a tiny recess. He slotted the coated metal slab into the recess. It fit perfectly. Gear teeth clicked beneath the panel. Mechanical mechanisms dormant for decades stirred. The metal slab slid sideways, revealing a set of downward-leading steps. It's open. It's open. Victor's voice shook. Senior, the entrance is open. Chen Lu called toward Lin Mu, who was still fighting amid the machines. Lin Mu glanced back, then gestured to Wen Wantong and Su Qingli. Wen Wantong unleashed a barrage of air shots to hold back advancing sentries. Su Qingli's flying sword formed a barrier of silvery light around the group, temporarily blocking the machine horde. The three Shi brothers retreated while fighting, and everyone converged quickly on the stairwell entrance. Lin Mu jumped down last. He punched the support beams above the entrance. Huge metal slabs and rubble crashed down, sealing the passage completely. The whirring and gunfire from outside faded away, only the distant rumble of falling stones echoing through the narrow stairwell. Let's move. Lin Mu brushed dust from his hands. Victor led the way down the spiral steps. After a while, the path opened up again. An underground cavern of staggering breadth spread out before them. The vaulted ceiling rose more than 10 meters overhead, supported by dozens of thick metal pillars. Row upon row of black metal cabinets occupied most of the cavern space. Each cabinet was covered in dense wiring ports and flickering indicator lights, shaped much like computer server racks. Embedded in the front of every cabinet was a crystal. The crystals resembled the mission crystal Lin Mu carried in his pocket, though most were dull and faded, as if drained of energy. A few still glowed faintly. We've arrived. Finally, Victor's eyes turned red as he whispered. Grandfather, father, you would see it now. I found the core matrix. Decades of crushing weight seemed to lift off his shoulders. Lin Mu walked toward the nearest bank of cabinets and placed his palm against one dull crystal. Nothing happened. No interface appeared on the panel. He shifted his hand to an adjacent crystal that shimmered weakly. The instant his fingertips made contact, text popped up on the panel. Dimensional crystal detected. Dimensional crystal, a special crystal imbued with spatial laws, capable of forming dimensional passages. A dimensional crystal? Spatial laws? I thought these were the city hearts. Chen-Lu stepped beside Lin-Mu, confused. Form dimensional passages? Does that mean we can open a permanent gateway, allowing us to travel back to this world from the train anytime? When Wantong wondered, does it explain how to construct a dimensional passage? Su Qingli asked. No instructions, just the prompt. It states dimensional crystals can build dimensional passages, yet there are no details on procedures, required conditions, or control terminals. Lin-Mu shook his head. Is the mission crystal actually a dimensional crystal? Using something meant for interworld gateways to power the core matrix. Isn't that a tremendous waste? When Wantong pondered, not necessarily wasted. It is far more likely the people of this world only discovered one application for dimensional crystals. They could not build dimensional passages, not for lack of desire, but lack of ability. Su Qingli brushed a finger against one crystal, deep in thought. In other words, even though these crystals can open dimensional paths, the threshold to operate them is incredibly high. The civilization of this world could never meet those requirements, so they settled for using them as power sources for nomadic cities instead. When Wantong followed the line of reasoning, that makes sense. Like primitive humans who can cook food with fire yet cannot build rockets. Fire isn't insufficient, they simply lack the knowledge. Chen-Lu nodded earnestly. Good analogy, Miss Lu. Shimeng scratched his bald head. Of course. You know who you're talking to. Chen-Lu tilted her chin upward proudly. We still don't know how to use them, but these are clearly valuable treasures. Gather as many as you can. They will prove useful someday. Lin-Mu reached a decision. But senior, we cannot store these crystals in our inventory. We couldn't stow the mission crystal we started with. Chen-Lu walked to one cabinet. She reached out, grasped the faintly glowing crystal, and tried to store it inside her inventory bag. Before she finished speaking, the crystal vanished from her palm. What? The mission crystal couldn't be stored. Chen-Lu froze, utterly stunned. It worked? You said you couldn't put them away. Shurgan leaned forward, eyes wide. I'm just as confused. She plucked another glowing crystal from a nearby cabinet and tried again. It vanished in a flicker of light. It worked again. What's going on? Chen-Lu blinked and turned toward Lin-Mu. Lin-Mu stepped forward to test. Sure enough, he successfully stored the crystal he removed from the cabinet. He then pulled out the original mission crystal from his pocket and attempted storage once more. It still could not be placed inside the inventory. It seems only the initial crystal we received at the start cannot be stored. Any dimensional crystal we acquire afterward can be placed normally. This is no coincidence. It must be a deliberate rule set by the train game. When Wantong ran her own test and surmised, why treat them differently if they are all dimensional crystals? Chen-Lu remained puzzled. So we will be discovered by the nomadic cities. So we will be hunted across this world. Su Qingli spoke calmly. Chen-Lu fell silent for a moment. Then comprehension flashed across her eyes. Devious. They hand us one crystal we cannot hide, marking us as outsiders no matter where we go, forcing the nomadic cities to chase us relentlessly. She exclaimed. The group chatted, criticizing the cruel design of the train game. No one noticed the bearded scavenger standing in the shadows for a long time. Victor lingered in the shadow of the cabinets, his gaze shifting between each member of the party. First shock, then realization, and finally tangled emotion. You are players of the train game? Victor could no longer hold back his question. Silence fell across the core matrix chamber. Every pair of eyes turned toward Victor, making him shrink backward instinctively. Lin-Mu met his gaze without pretense and nodded faintly. We are. Victor stared blankly, then suddenly laughed. There was no fear or hatred in that smile, only a relieved sense of sudden understanding. No wonder. No wonder you were hunted by the mobile metropolises. No wonder your strength defies all logic. If you are players of the train game, everything makes sense now. Victor said in an unexpectedly calm tone. Shimeng, Shuyong, and Shurgan had unconsciously moved to stand beside Victor. Though the three brothers struck no combat stances, their towering, muscle-bound frames alone exuded overwhelming pressure. Coupled with their scrutinizing gazes, they had not laid a hand on anyone, yet their intent was crystal clear. So what are your thoughts? Shimeng asked, his voice edged with wariness. Thoughts? What thoughts could I possibly have? I'm nothing more than a scavenger. It's the mobile metropolis's business that they hate you, hate all train game players. They have the luxury to nurse grudges after filling their bellies. For me, simply staying alive drains every ounce of strength. I have no energy left for anything else. Victor let out a bitter laugh, his tone laced with self-deprecation. Wondering if I'll get a full meal today, whether a blood beast will devour me tomorrow, or if I'll die abandoned in some corner the day after, those are the only questions on my mind. What outsiders from other worlds, hatred between civilizations, what do any of those things have to do with me? While the high-ranking officials of the mobile metropolises debate such matters inside warm offices, I'm crouched among ruins sifting through trash. The three Sure brothers exchanged glances, then turned as one to look at Lin Mu. Rest assured, the metropolis heart we promised you will be yours, Lin Mu stated plainly yet sincerely. Thank you. Thank you so much. One metropolis heart is enough for me to trade for legal residency in any mobile metropolis, plus a small house. I will never need to wander the wastelands again. That is all I want, truly all I want. Victor heaved a long sigh, his shoulders slumping. Moments later, his eyes grew moist. He quickly turned away and wiped the corners of his eyes with his sleeve. Chen Lu watched Victor, much of her vigilance fading. She stepped forward and clapped him on the shoulder. Come on, no need for tears. We always keep our promises, Chen Lu said boldly. Thank you, Sister Lu. Thank you, Sister Lu. Victor stumbled slightly from her pat, bowing repeatedly in gratitude. Lin Mu stood apart, lost in thought, and paying no heed to their conversation. This world differed from the previous two. Its inhabitants knew full well of the train game, knew of its players, and even understood they hailed from other worlds. Since they already possessed this knowledge, revealing information about the train would not constitute a violation. But if that was the case, why did the train game enforce the rule? Forbidden to disclose any information regarding the train game to natives of this world. Violators will be erased. The rule was effectively meaningless here, yet it still remained in effect. Unless, the train game itself merely followed a set of fixed protocols mechanically. Even if the prohibition served no purpose in this world, the rule had to persist regardless. If that held true, if the train only carried out preordained regulations without deviation, could there be loopholes within the system? Of course, Lin Mu knew he was far too weak to seek out such loopholes now, let alone exploit them. He was merely a level 34 player struggling to survive within this brutal game. He could barely control his own fate. Trying to exploit cracks in the rules would be far too premature. Still, he filed away this possibility in his mind. Someday, when he and his team grew powerful enough, when they stopped merely completing missions passively and began actively uncovering the truth behind the game itself, these buried observations might become the key to breaking everything open. Since we can collect all the plane crystals here, let us waste no time. 1. Su, Lu, and I will split into 4 directions to gather every crystal we can fit in our backpacks. Shermeng, bring your brothers to assist. Lin Mu immediately issued orders to begin the operation. Brother Lin, we will pass on collecting them. Shermeng waved his hands to decline. Right, our backpack inventory space is limited. We already carry plenty of supplies and are nearly full. Besides, plane crystals are incredibly valuable. We haven't contributed enough to claim a share. We'd feel uneasy taking them. Shi Yong added in agreement. Lin Mu glanced at them and did not press the matter. He understood the 3 burly men perfectly well. Limited backpack space was only an excuse. Their real motive was to avoid competing with him. Everyone knew exactly how precious plane crystals were within the train game. This was their voluntary show of restraint and loyalty. Smart choice, Lin Mu thought to himself. Very well, the 4 of us will handle it. Lin Mu nodded. The 4 then separated, picking different paths down the aisles between rows of server racks. The racks stretched neatly deep into the core matrix, numbering at least 200 or 300 upon rough estimation. Not every rack held an embedded plane crystal, however. Many slots sat empty, leaving only dust-covered interfaces behind. Chen Lu sprinted ahead, her twin ponytails whipping behind her like small banners. 1, 2, 3. This one's gone dark, grab it anyway. 4. This one still glows, perfect. 5. Lu, how many have you found over there? When Wantong's voice echoed from a short distance away. So many. These racks are like drawers, pulling treasures out one after another. It feels like raiding a treasure vault. Chen Lu called out without lifting her head. When the final plane crystal was stowed away, the 4 reconvened at the center of the core matrix, with the 3 Sure brothers gathering nearby. Report your counts, Lin Mu said. 23 on my end. 8 still emit light, when Wantong spoke first. 25. 7 are active, Su Qingli followed. I've got the most. 28, 9 glowing. Ha ha, luck is always on my side. Chen Lu shook her twin ponytails proudly and flashed Lin Mu a victory sign. 30 for me. Only 3 retain energy, Lin Mu said. At the same time, he quickly tallied the total in his head. 106 in total. 79 have faded completely, drained of energy. 27 still glow and hold power, Lin Mu summarized. 106 sounds like a large haul, yet most are depleted. Only 27 are actually usable, Wen Wantong said with a hint of regret. The question is how the system will score them during mission settlement. Will all 106 count, or only the 27 charged crystals? Chen Lu mused. Worst case scenario, only energized crystals count. Even then, we have 27, plus the initial crystal we obtained earlier, making 28 total. That amount should secure first place. Wen Wantong quickly calculated. If depleted crystals don't count, all that work will have been for nothing? Chen Lu gestured toward the pile of dim crystals, frustration clear on her face. Not entirely wasted. Even if the system ignores them, these crystals still hold immense value. Plain crystals can open planar portals. That function alone is worth far more than mission points. We will find a use for them sooner or later. Su Qingli's words lifted Chen Lu's spirits again. Lin Mu picked up one of the exhausted plain crystals, turning it over in his palm, then looked toward Victor, who remained caught up in his emotions in the corner. Victor! Victor snapped out of his daze and hurried over to Lin Mu. Sir, what are your orders? He bowed respectfully. Lin Mu held out the dim crystal directly to him. This is the reward we promised you. Victor stretched out both hands and accepted the crystal with trembling fingers. He stared down at it for a long moment before bending forward to offer Lin Mu a deep bow. Thank you, sir. Thank you to all of you. I, Victor Marchino, will never forget this kindness for as long as I live. His voice was rough, yet his eyes burned bright. Chen Lu stepped beside Victor and clapped him on the shoulder. Enough with the constant bowing. Find a home in a mobile metropolis and stop wandering the wastelands. Thank you. Thank you. Victor kept repeating his gratitude. It took a while before he managed to calm his emotions. Lin Mu clapped his hands then, drawing everyone's attention back to him. We are finished gathering the crystals. Now we need to discuss something else. Lin Mu scanned the group. Senior brother, we've collected so many mission crystals. Doesn't this mission basically guarantee us victory? What next? Find somewhere to hide and wait for the mission to end. Chen Lu folded her hands behind her back and tilted her head to ask. All other eyes turned toward Lin Mu, waiting for his decision. Lin Mu fell silent for a moment, then lifted his head. Has anyone considered launching a counterattack? He said seriously. A counterattack? Chen Lu's eyes widened in shock. Yes. Not long ago, we were hunted relentlessly by Ironspine City, forced to flee all the way from the wastelands to this abandoned metropolis. Armored vehicles, hovercraft, massive mechanical war machines bore down on us. Don't you want to return the favor? Lin Mu's tone remained calm, yet his words stunned everyone into silence. The three Sure brothers stared at each other in confusion. Victor nearly dropped the crystal clutched in his hands. More importantly, most of Ironspine City's security force has been deployed into this ruined metropolis to search for us. All those armored vehicles, hovercraft, and troops lined up along the trestles were pulled from inside Ironspine City itself. That means the metropolis is severely underdefended right now. Lin Mu held up one finger. Wen Wantong frowned slightly, thoughtful light flickering behind her glasses. So you intend to strike Ironspine City while its defenses are thin? I have to admit, the plan is bold, some might call it reckless. Even with most security forces deployed outside, the remaining garrison will still be substantial. A mobile metropolis is a fully fortified city. It has integrated defense systems, stationed troops, and possibly heavy weaponry we have yet to encounter. With only our small group, taking on an entire city stretches our capabilities thin. When Wantong hesitated, she did not wish to oppose Lin Mu, yet she had to voice her concerns. You are correct. Our odds of successfully attacking Ironspine City are low. Lin Mu did not refute her assessment. But what if we fail? I believe with our combined strength, no force in this region can block our retreat if we choose to fall back. His tone shifted immediately afterward. Chen Lu nodded vigorously, her twin ponytails bouncing with the movement. Exactly. Worst case, we run again. We've already fled from them once. You get used to running after enough close calls. She planted her hands on her hips, speaking with the weary confidence of someone who had survived countless escapes. Sister Lu makes a good point. The last time Ironspine chased us, we were caught off guard and unfamiliar with their strength. This time we strike on our own terms. We control when we advance and when we retreat. Shi Ming stroked his bald head as he analyzed the situation. Shi Yong nodded continuously beside him, his broad chest rising and falling with each motion. Shirgan had already begun stretching, cracking his knuckles loudly. But if we get lucky and succeed, the core matrix inside Iron Spine City will surely hold far more energized plane crystals than this place. Lin Mu continued. He spoke softly, yet every person present heard him clearly. Iron Spine City is fully operational. Its core matrix runs constantly, so most of its plane crystals should retain their energy. If we can seize them, we won't be limited to merely 27 crystals. Su Qingli's voice stayed even, yet everyone caught the quiet longing in her words. Precisely. And even if we cannot breach Iron Spine City's core matrix, entering the metropolis will still be worthwhile. Don't forget the enhancement alchemy cards, Lin Mu nodded. Enhancement alchemy cards, the ones crafted from blood beast sacks that function as attribute cards. Chen Lu blinked. Correct. Natives of this world use enhancement alchemy cards to forge augmented warriors. Iron Spine City must stockpile large quantities of these cards. As a complete mobile metropolis, both its security core and city garrison rely on augmented soldiers to maintain order. Lin Mu confirmed. Chen Lu began counting on her fingers. How many might there be? 100? Even 10 would be amazing. Her eyes lit up with excitement. A whole city would never have so few. Su Qingli cut in. Chen Lu looked up and noticed Su Qingli's breathing had quickened slightly. To draw such a reaction from the normally icy celebrity spoke volumes about how tempting the alchemy cards were. Senior brother, this opportunity is worth seizing. Chen Lu nodded firmly. Not to mention, Iron Spine City may hold more relics originating from the train game. This world was once selected by the train. After all, hundreds of millions of its people once entered the game. We do not know how they established contact with their home world afterward. But those hundreds of millions left far more than just enhancement alchemy cards behind, Lin Mu analyzed. You're right. The clearest example is the mobile metropolises themselves. The technology to forge plane crystals into metropolis core matrices undoubtedly stems from the train game, Wen Wantong agreed. I admit, the prospects are tempting. Su Qingli took a deep breath. Her voice remained calm, yet everyone heard suppressed eagerness beneath her words. Wen Wantong observed Su Qingli's expression, then watched Chen Lu practically bursting to charge straight into Iron Spine City. She let out a quiet sigh and smiled helplessly. If we fail, we simply run once more. If we succeed, even partial success will bring rewards impossible to ignore. When Wantong paused to consider, then let us try. She drew a deep breath, resolve hardening in her tone. Teacher Wen agrees. What about the rest of you? Chen Lu cheered, turning toward the three Shi brothers to wait for their answer. The three brothers straightened their backs at once. Where Brother Lin leads, we follow, Shermang declared, pounding his chest with a heavy thud. Exactly. It's just one mobile metropolis. We stick with Brother Lin, and nothing can shake us. Shi Yong shouted next, his booming voice echoing throughout the underground chamber. Besides, I haven't had enough fighting against those mechanical units earlier. I'm itching for more action. Iron Spine's security chased us halfway across the wasteland. I can't swallow that humiliation. It's time they learn what it feels like to be hunted. Shurgan slung his steel pipe over one shoulder. His bald head glinted under the lights, excitement plain on his face. When Wantong laughed watching the three men flexing their muscles eagerly. You three truly fear nothing. Of course not. The all-villains crew has never been known for being gentle. How could we miss a fight? Shermang replied matter-of-factly. Hear, hear. Shi Yong roared. And Brother Lin said we can run if things go south. So what's there to fear? Shurgan concluded reasonably. Chen Lu shook her head, hands on her hips, her ponytails swaying back and forth. You three sound oddly proud of being ready to flee at any moment. She teased. We learned that wisdom from Sister Lu. Shurgan gave her a thumbs up, grinning to reveal a set of white teeth. When did I ever teach you that? Chen Lu huffed, her ponytails flicking upward in irritation. Self-taught then. Shermang quickly added. Laughter rippled through the group, and even the reserved Su Qingli tugged the corners of her mouth upward into a faint smile. Only Victor remained in the corner, clutching his dim plane crystal as he watched this band of people plotting to assault an entire mobile metropolis. He acknowledged that train game players from outside this world might possess tremendous power, but this was a whole moving city they planned to attack. Truly, all train game players were madmen. Lin Mu clapped his hands once more to recapture everyone's attention. Enough banter. Now we will work out the plan, Lin Mu said solemnly. A plan? Can't we just charge straight in and fight? Chen Lu blinked in confusion. It will not be that simple. Though we accept retreat as a possibility, we stand to gain far more if we pull this off properly. Lin Mu reached over and gently ruffled the top of Chen Lu's head. Very well. Whatever you decide, senior brother, I will follow. Chen Lu nodded. Time quickly slipped into the next day. Dawn broke over the wasteland. Sunlight filtered through the steel frameworks of the abandoned mobile metropolis, casting dappled shadows across the ground. An off-road vehicle slowly emerged from the depths of the steel jungle. Its tires crunched over rust fragments and broken gravel. Sherming remained behind the wheel, his thick forearms steady as he gripped the steering wheel, sunglasses perched once again on the bridge of his nose. In the passenger seat, Shiyong stuffed compressed rations into his mouth, his cheeks puffed out like a hamster. Up on the roof rack, Shurgan sat cross-legged, his bald head gleaming bright beneath the morning sunlight. The people sitting in the back seat were no longer Lin Mu and the other three. Only Chen Lu and Wen Wantong remained. Chen Lu tucked the hem of her pleated skirt neatly beneath her thighs, her twin tails combed crisply. She looked nothing like the disheveled girl who had clung to Lin Mu inside the tent the previous night. Wen Wantong sat beside her, her bodycon skirt and white blouse immaculately arranged. Her gaze rested on Chen Lu, a flicker of worry crossing her eyes. Lu, are you sure you can do this? Wen Wantong asked softly. Chen Lu took a deep breath and turned to face her. The mischief that usually sparkled in her large eyes had vanished, replaced by an unfamiliar, determined glint. We follow the plan. Don't worry, Teacher One. I can handle it. Her voice dropped half an octave, carrying a reassuring steadiness she rarely displayed. After a brief pause, she added, I won't let senior brother down. When Wantong smiled at the sight of her acting so mature beyond her years and reached out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. I believe in you, when Wantong nodded. We believe in Sister Lu too. Sherming shouted from the driver's seat. Absolutely. When Sister Lu steps up, she's worth two people combined. Shiyong swallowed the last bite of hardtack, twisted around, and gave a thumbs up. Sister Lu, if anyone tries to cause trouble later, I'll be the first to step in. Shurgan banged on the roof from atop the vehicle. Flattered by the three burly men, Chen Lu's composed, grown-up demeanor crumbled instantly, and a grin tugged at the corners of her mouth. Good. The three of you stand behind me, chests out, put on your most intimidating faces and bolster my aura. Chen Lu waved her small hand, looking triumphant. Yes, ma'am, the three Shi brothers replied in unison. Their booming voices startled several unknown reptiles scurrying into rusted cracks along the roadside. Watching the scene, the worry in Wen Wantong's eyes melted into amusement. She glanced out the window. The towering iron-spined city loomed on the edge of the abandoned metropolis, its 8 mechanical legs quietly supporting the entire settlement like a dormant steel beast. The off-road vehicle accelerated, speeding out from the bounds of the abandoned city. Meanwhile, inside Iron City's temporary command post on the outskirts of the abandoned metropolis, a communications officer of the security force shot abruptly to his feet. Sir, the target vehicle has appeared. It's exiting through the eastern gate of the abandoned metropolis. All units, take positions. All pursuit teams converge on the target immediately. Remember the command. Priority is capture alive. Use lethal force if they resist. The communication channel erupted into chaos. Security officers and city guards scattered across the abandoned city mobilized rapidly. Armored vehicle engines roared one after another, and hovercars circling overhead adjusted course, speeding eastward. Ironspine City had sealed off the entire perimeter of the abandoned metropolis completely. All scavengers residing in the camps were trapped within the encirclement. No one was permitted to leave without authorization. This was the commander's strategy. Since intruders from outside the known world had slipped into the zone, seal off the whole area and let no one escape. Once a full sweep was complete, the intruders would have nowhere to hide. Instead of fleeing deep into the wasteland after leaving the abandoned metropolis, the off-road vehicle headed straight for the scavenger camps surrounding the city. Sherming wrenched the steering wheel hard, sending the vehicle hurtling toward the cluster of colorful tents and shacks. At the same time, Shurgan leaned down from the roof and twisted the car stereo's volume dial all the way to maximum. Deafening music exploded, echoing across the wasteland in the early morning light. Scavengers still asleep jolted awake from the sudden racket. Shouts and curses spilled out from tents and shanties. Some ran barefoot outside. Others clutched leftover rations from the previous night. Every head turned toward the source of the noise. Then they spotted the off-road vehicle. Bullet scars from the previous day's battle still marked its hull, and the bald man on the roof glinted under the sunlight. That's the vehicle, the one that raided the camp yesterday. Ironspine City is chasing this car. Those outsiders have come back. Are they insane? The security force is right nearby. Instead of running, they've come back here. The scavengers chattered nervously. Some stepped back instinctively. Others secretly reached for weapons at their waists. but most were drawn to something else. A clear, lively young girl's voice blared from the vehicle speakers. Hello, 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 can you hear me? Testing, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Her tone was sweet, like dropping a fruit candy into the wasteland sandstorm. Nothing like the voice of fugitives hunted by an entire mobile city. Perfect, volume works, Chen Lu said from the back seat, gripping a microphone. I hear this is Black Iron Gang territory. Where's your gang leader? Tell him to come out and meet me. The scavengers exchanged confused glances. Was this a provocation? Or a vendetta? Several gang members wearing leather jackets marked with Black Iron Gang insignia shrank back and hurried deeper into the camp. The off-road vehicle came to a halt on an open clearing in the camp center and went no further. Shermaine cut the engine and leaned back with folded arms, his eyes scanning every direction behind his sunglasses. Yong rested an elbow on the window, appearing relaxed, though his arm muscles remained taut, ready to act at any moment. Shurgan stood fully upright on the vehicle roof, a steel pipe slung over his shoulder. With his shaved head and rippling muscles, no one dared draw near merely from seeing him stand there. Chen Lu pushed open the door and jumped down. Her pleated skirt fluttered gently in the morning breeze, her twin tails swaying against her shoulders. She still held the microphone, and in her other hand, she carried a machete scored with marks from the previous day's fighting. When Wantong stayed in the vehicle, seated by the rear window, her right hand rested casually on the frame, her index fingers slightly bent, ready to strike at any second. More and more scavengers gathered, forming a dense crowd that surrounded the off-road vehicle. Everyone was curious about the person who had drawn such a massive response from Ironspine City. What they saw instead was a young girl who looked barely 10 years old. Ironspine City is hunting her? No way. It's her. I watched her charge into action when that hovercraft crashed yesterday. She's far more skilled than she looks. Shoo, keep your voice down. We can't afford to cross these people. As whispers rippled through the crowd, the rumble of engines echoed from deep within the camp. Several modified armored vehicles pushed through the onlookers and rolled forward slowly. Welded steel plating covering their hulls bore countless scratches and bullet holes, light machine guns mounted on the roofs aiming straight at the off-road vehicle. When the armored convoy stopped on the clearing, a middle-aged man in a dark leather trench coat stepped out. He was not tall, yet broad-shouldered, with steel gray eyes hardened by years surviving in the lawless wasteland. A dozen burly toughs followed behind him, all armed. Some carried shotguns and machetes, and one even wielded a modified chainsaw. That's Bulk. Bulk, leader of the Black Iron Gang. He's really come. The scavengers lowered their gazes instinctively, afraid to meet his eyes. To build a gang in this untamed wasteland and seize the most valuable territory bordering the abandoned metropolis, Bulk did not rely on mercy. Rumors said he was an augmented warrior exiled from a mobile city, with countless lives on his hands. Bulk climbed down from the vehicle. His gray-blue eyes swept over the off-road vehicle before settling on the twin-tailed girl standing in front. His brows furrowed briefly, then smoothed into a cold, hollow smile. I am Bulk, leader of the Black Iron Gang. Who are you people? Bulk asked in a low, rumbling voice. Faced with the man who towered a full head above her, Chen Lu showed no trace of fear. You don't need to know who I am. Chen Lu tilted her chin upward, her tone far colder than when she teased senior brother Linmu. She carried the air of a gang leader. Bulk's eye twitched. For 20 years he had roamed this wasteland, and never once had a young girl spoken to him in such a manner. Still, he held his temper and studied the group cautiously. Anyone capable of prompting an entire mobile city to deploy regular troops could never be as harmless as they appeared. Then what do you want with me? Bulk asked, forcing patience into his tone. Do you want this? Chen Lu wasted no words. She pulled a dull crystal from her backpack and tossed it casually toward Bulk. The crystal arced through the air. Morning light filtered through its translucent surface, casting dappled patterns across the sand. The instant the crystal appeared, Bulk's gaze locked onto it. The dozen toughs behind him widened their eyes, their breathing catching in their throats. Bulk reacted instinctively, fumbling to catch it. He cradled the crystal carefully between both hands, terrified it might slip and shatter on the ground. This is a city heart, one gang member behind Bulk blurted out in shock. His voice carried far enough for the whole camp to hear. A city heart. It really is a city heart, another subordinate shouted uncontrollably. The watching scavengers erupted into commotion. What? A city heart? That glow, that shape, there's no mistake. It's a city heart. I've only seen one once, from far away. How can she pull one out so casually? Who on earth is she, wandering around carrying a city heart? Bulk's fingers trembled as he held the crystal. He recognized it perfectly well. Even for a gang boss like him, a single city heart represented extraordinary wealth. More importantly, for scavengers like him, a city heart was the perfect passport to be readmitted to a mobile city and escape constant uncertainty. Official residency within a mobile city could not be bought with money, but it could be traded for a city heart. For all his apparent power, countless people coveted Bok's life. He had amassed enough wealth over the years. If he could secure official residency in a mobile city, who would not want to lay down their arms and live out the rest of their days in safety and comfort? Yet years leading a gang kept him from being blinded by sudden fortune. He took a deep breath, forcing his eyes away from the crystal and turning back to the twin-tailed girl. What exactly are you proposing? Bok's voice grew rougher, trembling faintly. Do one favor for me, and this is yours. Chen Lu tapped the crystal resting in his palm with her index finger, speaking lightly. What favor? Bok asked automatically, his mind racing with calculations. If he could obtain this city heart, doing them a favor meant nothing. Even clashing with Iron Spine City's security force was acceptable, so long as he avoided a head-on battle. At worst, he would take his reward and flee to another mobile city to start anew. But Chen Lu did not answer. She turned toward the surrounding scavenger crowd. A dense mass of people packed the camp perimeter, every pair of eyes fixed firmly on her. Some looked confused, some greedy, some terrified. Others stood on tiptoes at the back of the crowd, trying to get a clearer view. What about all of you? Do you want one too? Chen Lu lifted the microphone, her clear voice echoing over the camp. The scavengers froze. Then they watched the twin-tailed girl wave her hand. Several more dull crystals materialized in her palm, identical to the one she had tossed Bok. Before anyone could process what they were seeing, Chen Lu flicked her wrist and tossed the crystals onto the ground as carelessly as if throwing away worthless pebbles. Silence descended over the camp for 3 full seconds. Then everyone's breathing grew heavy. Hundreds of eyes stared rigidly at the crystals on the sand, their pupils reflecting the unique sheen of city hearts. Some swallowed hard, others clenched their fists. Several stepped forward, only to halt themselves. These were city hearts. A single one could buy a lifetime of stability and prosperity. And she tossed them onto the ground like worthless rubble? If they did not know this group was hunted by the full military might of an entire mobile city, hundreds of scavengers would have surged forward to grab them instantly. No one dared move. Greed warred with fear in every heart. The twin-tailed girl stood before the off-road vehicle, the focal point of every gaze. Her pleated skirt swayed in the morning wind. The tip of her machete touched the ground, microphone raised to her lips, a faint smile playing on her face. Do you want them? Chen Lu asked again. Her voice remained clear, laced with an irresistible allure. If you want one, do one task for me. Complete it, and there will be all the city hearts you could wish for. Deep within the abandoned metropolis, in the steel labyrinth near Iron Spine City's trestle bridge, Lin Mu and Su Qingli darted behind a rusted pipeline. Su Qingli closed her eyes. With her spirit power raised to 65 points, the wind listener skill operated at full capacity. Every sound within hundreds of meters registered in her ears, weaving a precise audio map inside her mind. She opened her eyes and gestured to Lin Mu. Understanding, the two slipped silently into a narrow maintenance passage. The air reeked of rust and machine oil. The pitted metal flooring required careful steps to avoid making noise. Shortly afterward, a fully armed squad of city guards marched past the spot where they had been standing. Boots struck the metal surface in uniform rhythm, the lead officer speaking quietly into his radio. Once the footsteps faded, Su Qingli exhaled softly. The wind listener skill is priceless in situations like this. We would have been discovered without you, Lin Mu whispered. Su Qingli glanced at him, a nearly imperceptible smile tugging at her lips. They continued sneaking through the steel ruins and soon reached the 3rd floor of a derelict building. Through shattered windows, they commanded an unobstructed view of Iron Spine City's temporary trestle bridge. Constructed from countless metal plates, the bridge connected Iron Spine City to the edge of the abandoned metropolis. Temporary fortifications lined both sides. Sandbag emplacements housed at least 3 heavy machine guns, their black barrels aimed toward the abandoned city. Teams of security officers and city guards traversed the bridge constantly. Some unloaded supplies, others formed up for deployment, and clusters gathered to study maps. Heavily armed guards manned the bridge entrance. 6 fixed sentry posts were visible to the naked eye, alongside countless roving patrols. They're pulling out all the stops. It seems they think highly of us. Lin Mu leaned against the wall, observing the activity below. Even if most of the mobile city's forces have scattered to search the zone, the troops left to guard the bridge are still formidable. Su Qingli crouched beside him, also watching the scene. Her gaze swept across the gun emplacements and sentries as she silently calculated distances and angles. We're within effective range now. All we can do is wait for Lulu to make her move, Su Qingli said after assessing the terrain. Lin Mu did not reply, merely staring out the window. She will pull it off, he said after a moment, his tone brimming with unwavering trust. The instant he finished speaking, a dull explosion boomed in the distance. A second, then a third followed in quick succession. Blasts rippled outward from the outer zones of the abandoned metropolis, one after another like a string of ignited firecrackers. Waves of commotion followed, shouts, whistles, and the frantic roar of vehicle engines. Lin Mu and Su Qingli both looked toward the window. Plumes of black smoke rose skyward on the city's outskirts, stark against the morning light. The explosions intensified, spreading inward from the perimeter. Security force troops and city guards stationed on the trestle bridge had clearly received word. An officer sprinted out from the temporary command tent, yelling orders into his radio. Squads waiting in formation were rushed into action. Armored vehicles and off-road vehicles ignited their engines. Troops boarded transports and raced toward the source of the explosions. Order on the bridge dissolved instantly. Men ran to and fro, hauling ammunition, and the communication channels buzzed nonstop with calls. Lulu has begun. A smile curved Su Qingli's lips. I knew it. She may not excel at ordinary tasks, but stirring up chaos is her specialty. Lin Mu laughed, his voice warm with indulgence. You're treating her like the Monkey King wreaking havoc in heaven. Su Qingli joked, surprising even herself. She turned her head away slightly. She really is that energetic, never able to stay still for long, Lin Mu nodded. His eyes remained fixed on the smoke climbing into the sky, free of anxiety, filled with quiet certainty. Chaos spread rapidly across every corner of the abandoned metropolis. A security force patrol advanced along an abandoned main road when 3 spherical metal canisters flew out from a half-collapsed factory beside them, sparks hissing from their fuses. Grenades. Get down. The squad leader's eyes widened, throwing himself to the ground instinctively. Boom, boom, boom. 3 thunderous blasts shook the ground. Shockwaves hurled rust and gravel in every direction. Several officers were tossed head over heels by the impact, left dazed and ringing for minutes. Inside the factory where the canisters had been thrown, a group of scavengers ducked out the rear exit and fled. Hurry up, move out. A heavily stubbled scavenger dragged his companion, who kept glancing back at the explosions. The two scrambled into a narrow maintenance tunnel. Did we hit anyone? The companion asked excitedly as they ran. Who cares? The noise is loud enough. The stubbled man grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. He pulled several crudely manufactured bombs from the pockets of his patched leather jacket and handed 2 to his companion. Old One-Eye's crew set off blasts too, louder than ours. We need to throw a couple more next round. We can't let them steal the spotlight. He rubbed his hands together, burning with excitement. The pair emerged from the far end of the tunnel and collided head-on with another squad of scavengers armed with shotguns. You're pulling back too? The city guard unit up north got blown to bits, scrambling all over the streets. What a sight. A scavenger hefting a shotgun shouted. We can't stay here. We need a new spot to keep hitting them. I watched from the pipes, just now. 3 armored vehicles rolled in from the west, blocking our planned escape route. We'll have to take a detour through the old mill. Another scavenger clutching homemade bombs cut in urgently. The old mill? That's the rats' territory. Will they even let us pass? Someone voiced their doubt. Boss Red already gave the go-ahead. He said we can use his land as long as we keep harassing the city guard. Doesn't matter what gets wrecked. None of it's worth anything but scrap metal anyway, the scavenger explained. All right then, let's move. One man slapped his thigh. The scavengers quickly finalized their plan and veered onto a side path, breaking into a run. They moved lightly, weaving between abandoned vehicles and collapsed steel frames with the ease of walking through their own backyard. When city guard armored vehicles rumbled past the main road, they all ducked into shadowed corners. Only once the vehicles faded from sight did they peek out and resume running. These scavengers knew every inch of this place. They could navigate blind, which roads connected where, which buildings held back exits, which pipes could be climbed, which hidden doorways lay beneath the rubble. They had survived here for more than a decade. This ruined metropolis was their home. Behind them, the city guard pursuit had devolved into chaos. Targets fleeing down the alley to the right. A city guard sergeant yelled into his radio. The right? I've got movement on the left over here. Wait, they're above us. 3rd floor, on the pipelines. Reports clashed across the command channel, turning communications into total bedlam. Multiple pursuit teams were led in circles through the labyrinthine streets. Some chased down the wrong corridors, others looped back to where they started, and a few were lured into dead ends, only to have two homemade bombs drop from overhead. Boom. Damn it, another explosion. Are these scavengers insane? When did they get this organized? Not just organized, slippery as hell. I've chased them 3 blocks and haven't caught a glimpse of anyone. Several city guard soldiers huddled behind cover, coated in ash, their uniforms stained with rust and rock dust, thoroughly disheveled. In an abandoned high-rise not far away, Bulk, leader of the Black Iron Gang, sat before a polished metal table tended by his men. A clean cloth covered the surface, laid out with several open cans and a jug of water. Out here in the wasteland, this counted as hospitality fit for an important guest. A satisfied grin tugged at Bulk's lips as he slid a can of beans across the table. "Miss Liu, what do you think of the show? Rest assured, my men aren't a match for the regular troops of Iron Spine City, but when it comes to causing chaos, we're professionals." Chun Lu sat across from him, her machete propped against the arm of her chair. The 3 brothers, Shi Meng, Shi Yong, and Shi Gan stood rigidly in a line behind her, their bald heads stark against the dim light. Chun Lu glanced at the cans on the table, her brows furrowed in clear distaste. "This is all you eat?" She nodded toward the beans. Bulk froze. He stared at the can, then back at Chun Lu's expression, unsure how to respond. "This is the best we've got in camp. These beans are scavenged from mobile cities. One can trade for 3 good animal hides," he replied, lacking confidence. Chun Lu shook her head dismissively and pushed the can back. "I prefer fresh food." As she spoke, she waved a hand. A thick cut of steak, fresh vegetables, and several unopened bottles of mineral water materialized on the table out of nowhere. Bulk's eyes bulged, and the can in his hands nearly slipped to the ground. "Is that real meat? Actual fresh meat, not synthetic imitation?" One of Bulk's underlings leaned so far forward he nearly sprawled across the table, inhaling the raw scent of the steak greedily, his eyes blazing. "Naturally. Do I look like someone who eats synthetic meat? Have your men prepare this." Chun Lu rolled her eyes. Bulk snapped to attention. "Right. Someone get this steak on the grill. Use the best charcoal available. If anyone burns it, I'll skin them alive." His voice shook with excitement as he shouted orders. Several underlings swarmed forward, carefully lifting the steak with trembling hands. Fresh meat was more precious than anything in the wasteland. Only high-ranking figures within mobile cities could afford such luxury. Watching the men hurry off to light the fire, Chun Lu leaned back against her chair. Her pleated skirt settled loosely over her legs as she crossed one knee over the other. Her posture was relaxed, yet carried an undeniable aura of authority that commanded respect. "Let's get down to business. What was the name of that second mobile city that arrived yesterday?" Chun Lu asked, her tone calm yet weighty. "Black Sand City," Bulk answered quickly, tearing his gaze away from the departing men. "Black Sand City." Chun Lu repeated the name, tapping one finger gently against the chair arm. Alongside the forces chasing them from Iron Spine City, another mobile city had reached this region the previous day. Black Sand City pursued the listening Wind and Phoenix vessels, anchoring on the opposite side of the ruined metropolis, also searching for the interlopers known as train players. Chun Lu turned toward Wen Wantong, who stood by the distant window. Wen Wantong had been observing the landscape ever since she arrived, her gaze fixed on the direction of Iron Spine City's docking trestle. Sensing Chun Lu's stare, Wen Wantong gave a slight nod. Chun Lu drew a deep breath and stood. "It's time to set our plan in motion." The laziness faded from her voice, replaced by resolve. "Understood." Bulk rose to his feet and pulled an old military radio from his waist. He stepped to the window and pressed the transmit button. "Pass the word. Don't only target Iron Spine City troops. Hit Black Sand City's search parties too." A chorus of excited replies crackled over the speaker. "Boss, we've been waiting for this. We're itching for a fight." "Too right. We've ambushed Iron Spine forces 4 or 5 times already, haven't touched Black Sands once. Not fair. We won't let you down. We'll send them scattering." A satisfied smile crossed Bulk's face. He switched to a different channel and issued new orders. "Eagle, take your men and lead the Black Sands patrol straight toward Iron Spine's units. Just make sure they run into each other. No need to engage directly." "Received. Leave it to me. I'm an expert at making rivals turn on one another." Bulk shut off the radio and turned back to Chun Lu with an ingratiating smile. "Miss Lu, all arrangements are complete. Good work." Chun Lu sat back down and crossed her legs once more. On the outer edge of the ruined metropolis, Black Sand City's search unit advanced along the main roadway. They had tracked the listening Wind and Phoenix here the day prior, tasked with hunting intruders from outside this world. Much like Iron Spine City's troops, they had sealed off the outskirts of the abandoned city, sending teams inward to search zone by zone. Their camp stood on the opposite side of the metropolis, separated from Iron Spine's forces by most of the ruined city. Up until now, the two groups had kept out of each other's way. Now, they would be forced to clash. A Black Sands patrol marched through an abandoned residential district when several crude bombs suddenly hurtled down from a tall building beside them. Boom, boom. The blast wave flipped two light armored vehicles, leaving multiple soldiers wounded. Ambush. They're on the building. The patrol captain reacted instantly, ordering his men to surround the structure. But the scavengers who threw the bombs were long gone, leaving only empty bomb casings and thick smoke. Damn it, they slipped away again. Those rats. The captain slammed a fist against a crumbling wall, cursing. Just then, one soldier pointed toward a branching road ahead. Captain, I see suspicious figures heading that way. After them. The Black Sands unit gave chase down the narrow side passage. The road constricted further ahead, hemmed in by dense, ruined buildings, with overhead walkways and pipelines blocking much of the sky. They pursued for nearly 5 minutes before the figures vanished around the corner of an abandoned factory. The captain hesitated whether to press deeper when he spotted another armed group approaching from straight ahead. They wore Iron Spine City standard combat uniforms, at least 30 strong, weapons raised and advancing with hostile intent. Iron Spine troops. The captain held up a hand to halt his men. The Iron Spine party spotted them as well and stopped short. The two groups stood less than 50 meters apart, firearms aimed at one another. You're from Black Sands City? This is Iron Spine's search sector. You've crossed the boundary. The lead Iron Spine officer spoke coldly. The Black Sands captain frowned, ready to reply, when two metal canisters arced out from a third-floor window of a nearby derelict tower. One landed beside the Iron Spine unit, the other next to the Black Sands patrol. Two explosions detonated almost simultaneously. Open fire. No one could tell who shouted first, or who pulled the trigger initially. Troops from the two mobile cities exchanged gunfire amid the residential ruins, bullets ricocheting through the narrow alleyways. Iron Spine soldiers took cover behind overturned trucks, while Black Sands troops sheltered against half-collapsed walls. The firefight raged for 5 full minutes, only ending once reinforcements arrived for both sides. The Iron Spine commander roared into his radio. We're under attack by Black Sands City forces. Request backup. The Black Sands commander shouted over his own channel. Iron Spine's men have gone mad. They opened fire on our unit. Command networks descended into chaos, flooded with conflicting orders. Hold position, retreat, counterattack. Meanwhile, the scavengers who had orchestrated the conflict fled far away. They crouched on the rooftop of an abandoned warehouse, watching the battle unfold while chewing rations. They're fighting. Look, another armored truck from Black Sands. Iron Spine's bringing more too. 3 no, for vehicles. Ha ha, let them tear each other apart. The boss's plan is brilliant. It wasn't the boss's idea. That was Miss Liu. If you ask me, she's the real mastermind. They spoke in hushed tones, watching the conflict with undisguised delight. Near the docking trestle, inside another ruined building, Lin Mu and Su Qingli stood at a window, watching troop movements accelerate below. Squadrons of city guard were redeployed non-stop. Messengers rushed in and out of the makeshift command post, every face etched with stress. Armored vehicles parked along the trestle ignited their engines one after another, racing toward different sectors of the ruined metropolis. Even one of the 3 heavy machine cannons was being dismantled and loaded onto a transport truck, bound for areas under heavy pressure. They've pulled back at least 2/3 of their combat strength. Only static sentries remain, and regular patrols have been drastically reduced. Su Qingli said quietly. Her listening skill relayed every sound within hundreds of meters to her senses. Then we move now. Lin Mu stretched his wrists, joints clicking softly. Understood. Su Qingli nodded. She pulled an iron sword from her backpack. Silver light flickered along the blade as she gripped it. The sword core inside her dantian trembled. Channeling all 65 points of mental power, she released the sword. It hovered in midair between them, roughly half a meter above the ground. The silver glow remained bright even in the morning light. Su Qingli steadied herself, lifted the hem of her traditional robe, and carefully stepped onto the blade. The sword dipped slightly before stabilizing. This is my first time carrying another person while flying. I've only practiced riding it alone before. She glanced back at Lin Mu, a rare trace of nervousness in her voice. I trust you. Lin Mu stepped onto the sword beside her. The blade sank sharply downward. Su Qingli poured more power into the sword core, and silver radiance surged forth to level their platform. She bore the added weight, fine beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Stay close to maintain balance. Otherwise, I cannot stabilize our flight. Her voice tightened. Linmu reached out and supported her upper back. Su Qingli's body stiffened slightly. She could feel his hand against her robe, and the brief distraction made the sword wobble. Try not to shift suddenly. She bit her lower lip, forcing her tone to stay calm. I haven't moved. Linmu's voice reached her ears from beside her. Su Qingli drew a deep breath and refocused all her attention on the sword core. The silver light steadied, and the iron sword slowly ascended, gliding out through the shattered window. Morning wind swept over them, lifting Su Qingli's long hair to brush Lin Mu's cheek. She stood toward the tip of the blade, robes billowing in the wind, resembling a celestial sword immortal, if not for the faint pink tint on her ear tips. Hold steady, Su Qingli murmured. The sword tilted forward and streaked toward the trestle as a silver flash. Guards patrolled the trestle below. Ever since outsiders hijacked 6 hovercraft the previous day, Iron Spine City's garrison had remained on high alert. Though most troops were dispatched to search the ruins, the sentry stationed here dared not slack off. A young security trooper marched back and forth, his boots clanging against metal plating. He reached the trestle's edge and glanced outward as usual. That was when he spotted the silver streak. What's that? He squinted, trying to make out the fast-approaching light. His partner noticed it too and looked up. It looks like people. No, 2 people. Standing on something. A sword. They're riding a giant sword. Shouts erupted across the trestle. This world knew nothing of sword immortals, so no one called it a flying blade. The silver glow drew closer, and 2 figures came into clear view. A woman clad in white flowing robes at the front, and a man standing behind her. Enemy incoming. Enemy incoming. The sentry finally reacted, shouting at the top of his lungs. But the sword traveled far too fast. By the time the warning left his mouth, the silver flash skimmed overhead. Powerful gusts swept the soldiers' caps away, and flags flapped violently in the wind. Shoot! Open fire! Someone yelled. Yet by the time soldiers scrambled to raise their weapons and aim, the sword had crossed most of the trestle, shrinking to a distant silver speck. What was that thing that flew past? An officer sprinted out of the command post, grabbing the sentry by the shoulder. It was a sword, sir. 2 people were riding it. The sentry stammered. A sword? 2 people. The officer looked as though he'd heard utter nonsense. It's true. All of us saw it. They headed straight toward Iron Spine City. Intruders breached the trestle. Send an immediate report. Another soldier pointed toward the vanishing light. The officer cursed and rushed back inside to grab his radio and relay the emergency. Panic spread through the trestle. Sirens blared alongside shouts and pounding footsteps as remaining soldiers scrambled to reorganize defensive lines. Lin Mu and Su Qingli paid no heed to the chaos they left behind. Sustained flight drained Su Qingli heavily. Her complexion paled, her breathing grew labored, and sweat streamed down her forehead. Flying on the sword already demanded immense mental energy. Carrying Lin Mu amplified the strain. The blade trembled more noticeably with every passing second, and feedback from the sword core grew increasingly unstable. I can't go any farther, Su Qingli gasped. The sword began a slow descent, its silver glow flickering unevenly. It's enough. We've passed the most heavily guarded stretch. Lin Mu spoke beside her. The sword touched down on an open section of the trestle's rear half. As they stepped off, Su Qingli stumbled briefly. Are you all right? Lin Mu reached out to steady her. I'm fine, just low on mental power. I'll recover after a short rest. Su Qingli shook her head and gripped the iron sword once more. Its radiance dimmed significantly. Rest first. I'll handle what comes next. Lin Mu turned to face the path ahead. The latter half of the trestle bridge was far broader than the front section, with Iron Spine City less than 200 meters away. They had already left the deadly emplacement bunkers and dense sentry posts far behind during their sword flight. Nevertheless, the entire trestle had been fully alerted. City garrison troops and security officers scrambled to mobilize in response. Heavy machine guns originally aimed toward the derelict metropolis were hastily swiveling their barrels, while soldiers whirled around to train their firearms on the 2 uninvited intruders breaking through the rear defensive line. They're coming from the back. Spin the machine guns now. Don't let them escape. Open fire. Fire at will. Gunfire erupted all at once, pouring down on the pair in a relentless hail of bullets. Lin Mu made no attempt to dodge. He pulled an iron axe from his backpack, took aim at one emplacement, frantically realigning its cannon along the trestle's edge, and hurled the weapon with full force. Boosted by a stat value of over 100 strength, the axe sliced through the air with a shrill whistle akin to an artillery shell. Boom! The iron axe slammed straight into the heavy machine gun's base, spraying showers of sparks from the brutal metal collision. A massive crater was punched into the armored foundation, warping the gun barrel sideways and locking the weapon completely out of commission. There is a second emplacement, Su Qingli warned from behind him. Lin Mu drew a second iron axe and threw it using the exact same motion. Boom. The second heavy machine gun fell silent amid a deafening crash. What kind of weapon is that? Was that actually an axe? No regular axe can pierce military-grade armor plating. That has to be custom hardware built for augmented warriors. Forget the gun barrel, look what it smashed through. That's solid military armored steel. Terrified by the sheer destructive power of the two axe throws, city garrison soldiers scattered to seek cover. Some huddled behind sandbags, others crawled beneath armored vehicles, and a handful pressed themselves against the trestle's steel support frames. Gunfire never ceased, however. Bullets streaked in from every direction, striking the metallic walkway and bursting into tiny sparks. Lin Mu stood firmly in front of Su Qingli to shield her. Several stray rounds struck his chest and shoulders, yet only left faint red marks on his skin before bouncing off with sharp clangs onto the metal floor. The bullets can't hurt him at all. What sort of monster is this? Even top-tier augmented warriors don't possess such impenetrable flesh. Plain dread laced the soldiers' panicked shouts. Ignoring the incoming gunfire entirely, Lin Mu bent down and lifted Su Qingli into his arms in a bridal carry. With 149 points invested in strength, holding the young woman who weighed barely 50 kilograms felt as effortless as clutching a wisp of cloud. Su Qingli instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck, her iron sword held horizontally between their bodies, its silvery glow now greatly dimmed from overuse. "Hold on tight," Lin Mu murmured, glancing down at her. He tensed his leg muscles, denting the steel surface of the trestle under his powerful stomp before launching himself toward Ironspine City like a live artillery round. Unleashing his full 134-point agility stat, Lin Mu moved so swiftly the human eye could barely track his physical form. Bullets chased his fading afterimage across the trestle pavement, never once catching up to his actual body. Scenery on both sides blurred into streaking metallic lines as the trestle's steel framework rushed backward at high speed. Su Qingli buried her face against Lin Mu's chest with her eyes squeezed shut as gales of wind roared loudly in her ears. The 200-meter stretch was traversed within mere breaths thanks to Lin Mu's overwhelming speed. The defensive perimeter marking Ironspine City's trestle terminus loomed directly ahead. Station guards frantically hauled up road barriers and parked several armored vehicles across the exit to block their path. Lin Mu did not slow his pace. He retrieved another iron axe from his pack and hurled it hard. The weapon cut through the air with a piercing shriek and crashed into the front armored vehicle's hood, crumpling the engine cover upward and sending the tank skidding sideways half a meter to crash into the nearby barricades. A second axe followed immediately, striking the underside of another armored vehicle. The chassis shuddered violently, throwing every soldier inside off balance. Lin Mu carried Su Qingli cleanly through the narrow gap, left between the two disabled vehicles. Gunfire roared behind them, bullets peppering Ironspine City's metal buildings and scattering countless sparks. He then turned into a narrow side alley, and their figures vanished completely within the labyrinthine steel sprawl of Ironspine City. Gunfire echoed along the trestle for a few more seconds before gradually dying away. Soldiers stared at one another in stunned silence, their faces etched with bewilderment and raw fear. Who exactly were these beings, capable of sword flight and shrugging off small arms fire with their bare bodies? Moments later, a high-ranking military officer strode onto the trestle escorted by several aides. He glanced at the two wrecked heavy machine guns, scanned the field littered with bullet holes and spent casings, and his face darkened with unbridled fury. "Where are the intruders?" The officer's voice dropped to an icy, frigid tone. "Yes, sir, they've broken into the city proper." A junior sergeant saluted shakily. Broken into the city? 300 men guarding a single trestle, supported by two heavy machine gun emplacements. And you claim you could not detain just two people? The officer raised his voice sharply. Cold sweat beaded across the sergeant's forehead, who dared not utter a single word in reply. The officer drew a deep breath to suppress his rage and took a communication transceiver handed over by an aide. "Patch me through to the council speaker," he ordered, his tone regaining composure even as his expression remained grim. Static crackled over the transceiver before a low, rumbling voice sounded from the other end of the line. "What is the matter?" "Speaker, two trespassers have slipped past our defenses and entered Ironspine City." A lengthy silence hung over the communication channel. Understood. The line went dead right after those two words. Iron Spine City, this mobile metropolis, looked vastly different up close compared to Lin Mu's initial assumptions. From the exterior, it resembled a colossal steel behemoth held aloft by 8 massive mechanical legs. Stepping inside, however, revealed the city was not constructed solely of cold, lifeless metal. Though buildings lining the streets were primarily steel frameworks, their outer walls were coated in paints of varying hues, with faded cloth store signs dangling from numerous facades. Far more civilians populated the streets than Lin Mu had anticipated. Mechanics clad in work overalls wandered in small groups. Some carried toolboxes, while others ate breakfast as they walked along the pavement. Ordinary residents queued in long lines at public water stations, clutching buckets of assorted sizes waiting to fill their water containers. Scavengers with tattered leather coats, much like victors, roamed the roadside with bulging backpacks, setting up makeshift stalls to peddle scrap machinery parts and salvaged metal collected out in the wasteland. The air hung thick with a mingled scent of cooked food and machine lubricant, carrying a distinct, tangible aura of everyday human life within this harsh urban landscape. Lin Mu and Su Qingli blended seamlessly into the pedestrian crowd as ordinary passers-by. Su Qingli's antique-style traditional robes did stand out noticeably against the industrial backdrop, yet Iron Spine City was a bustling hub for scavengers and traveling merchants. People wearing outlandish attire were commonplace, so few paid her any mind. A handful of young men passing by spared lingering glances, though their attention was drawn mostly to her exquisite facial features rather than her clothing. Su Qingli was long accustomed to such stares and did not so much as furrow her brow. Attention, all residents. The council speaker has released an official announcement. Last night's sweep operation within the derelict metropolis yielded major progress. Authorities have pinpointed the activity zone of the extra-dimensional invaders. A loudspeaker mounted on a utility pole suddenly blared, capturing Lin Mu's full attention. According to verified intelligence, the invader force numbers between 6 and 8 individuals, possessing combat power equivalent to elite augmented warriors. The city garrison has confirmed the invaders are fully contained within the eastern sector of the abandoned city, with total eradication projected to conclude within 24 hours. The announcer's tone was stiff and formal, typical of official government broadcast delivery. Local pedestrians were thoroughly desensitized to these periodic public announcements and reacted with total apathy. They claimed they locked onto their position last night, and now they're saying the exact same thing again. Do they actually have a solid lead or not? A middle-aged woman waiting in the water queue muttered to the person beside her. Not our problem either way. We aren't the ones tasked with hunting them down. Her companion shrugged and inched their bucket forward in the queue. Don't be so sure. Word is these extra-dimensional invaders are nothing like regular fugitives we've dealt with before. My cousin works for the security division, and he said High Command issued an ultimatum. Every security unit will face collective punishment if these targets aren't apprehended. A mechanic gripping a toolbox cut into their conversation. Extra-dimensional invaders? I thought those were nothing more than old folktales. They're real. The middle-aged woman looked thoroughly skeptical. Folktale? Do you remember what happened in Gracespire City 10 years ago? The same extra-dimensional invader narrative sparked 2 weeks of total chaos, and no one ever got a clear answer on how the crisis was resolved. The entire city security force was purged and replaced after that incident. The mechanic lowered his voice, speaking in a conspiratorial hush loud enough for nearby bystanders to overhear. A small discussion erupted among the group of townsfolk. Lin Mu exchanged a brief glance with Su Qingli and continued walking forward. Upon rounding a street corner, a dense crowd gathered around a small public plaza. At the center stood a makeshift table hammered together from scrap sheet metal, behind which a gaunt man in a garish leather jacket shouted loudly to draw in spectators. Place your bets now. Updated odds are posted. 2-to-1 payout if city security captures the invaders. 1.5-to-1 if the city garrison succeeds. 10-to-1 odds if the invaders evade capture entirely. The scrawny bookie waved a metal slate covered in messy chalk handwriting listing all betting odds. Flanked by several burly enforcers armed with sharp hunting knives strapped to their waists to maintain order. Another underground betting ring run by the Viper Gang. These criminals exploit every major incident for gambling profits. A scavenger walking past shook his head disapprovingly. Aren't you going to place a wager? His traveling partner grinned. Of course I am. I'm putting 10 metal chips on the city garrison. They look unimpressive on a daily basis, but sheer numerical advantage counts for something. Hundreds of troops surrounding a handful of intruders, they have to catch them eventually. You're relying on outdated logic. I've heard first-hand accounts these invaders are extraordinarily formidable. They took out 6 hover vehicles on the derelict city outskirts yesterday. 6 vehicles. Think carefully about what that means. 6 hovercraft? I never heard a word about that. Is it genuine? Your information network is obsolete. A distant relative of mine witnessed the whole event from a safe distance. I'm putting my chips on the invaders escaping. Tenfold returns would turn 10 metal chips into 100 instantly. The 2 scavengers argued as they squeezed into the crowd, each handing a handful of polished metal betting tokens over to the bookie. Lin Mu lingered at the crowd's perimeter, observing the chaotic scene with mild amusement. It's a shame we don't carry this city's currency. I would have loved to put down a bet, he whispered quietly with a hint of regret. Su Qingli glanced sideways toward him, a look of helplessness flickering across her features. Which outcome would you back? She asked out of curiosity after a short pause. Naturally, I'd bet on the invaders getting away. 10-to-1 odds is practically guaranteed profit, Lin Mu replied matter-of-factly. Su Qingli fell silent for a moment before uttering a single sharp word through pressed lips. Frivolous. Lin Mu let out a soft laugh and pulled his gaze away from the betting stall to scan the crowd slowly. It was then he spotted a noteworthy individual. A middle-aged man wearing a frayed leather jacket with unkempt hair and bloodshot eyes. He had just staked his very last metal chip on the gamble, marking him as a chronic compulsive gambler. Vane, how can you afford another bet? You still owe Old One-Eye money from your previous debts. Where did you scrounge up more chips? Someone recognized the man and called out in teasing fashion. Mind your own business. The gambler named Vane snapped without slowing his footsteps. I'd ease up on the wagers if I were you. Lose one more round, and you'll be forced to mortgage your ramshackle shanty. The man retorted good-naturedly. Vane ignored the remark and quickened his pace, muttering incoherent phrases under his breath. Lin Mu patted Su Qingli's shoulder and jerked his chin toward the gamblers retreating back. Come along. We've found our lead. Su Qingli followed his line of sight and frowned slightly. A mere gambler? Gamblers know every dark corner and hidden underbelly of a city better than anyone else. Furthermore, desperate men such as him lack strong loyalty and will talk readily under pressure. The pair trailed after Vane at an unhurried pace. Vane turned into a cramped, shadowy alleyway. Tall buildings pressed closely together on both sides, with a tangled web of pipes and overhead cables blocking most sunlight and plunging the passage into dim gloom. Still lost in his own internal monologue, Vane muttered continuously as he walked. I'm bound to strike it rich this time. I have to be. Those invaders need to hold out for a few more days. If the garrison captures them within 3 days, I'll double my original stake. I can pay off my debt to Old One-Eye and still have leftover funds afterward. I'll wager another large sum with the leftover money. A single big win could let me relocate to the mid-tier residential district. I just need to stay calm and play this smart. This bet is definitely a winner. I dreamed of wildfires sweeping over mountain ridges last night. The old fortune teller said fire in dreams signifies incoming wealth. Completely absorbed in his delusions of fortune, Vane remained oblivious to being stalked. Lin Mu pressed a palm firmly against the back of Vane's neck, and the gambler's body instantly went limp and collapsed to the ground. Lin Mu grabbed him by the collar and dragged the unconscious man into an abandoned storage shed tucked off the alley. Wake him up, Lin Mu instructed. Su Qingli knelt down and touched her index finger lightly to Vane's forehead. A thin wisp of sword chi pierced his consciousness. Vane's body jolted violently, his eyelids fluttering rapidly before he regained consciousness. Confusion clouded his vision at first, quickly replaced by stark terror when he spotted a glowing iron blade pressed against his throat. The cold metal surface sending a chill crawling across his entire body. He lifted his gaze to find the sword held by an extraordinarily beautiful woman dressed in unfamiliar garments. Spare my life. I only have 3 metal chips left in my right pocket. Take all of them. I can borrow more if that isn't enough. Give me 1 single day. I swear I can gather whatever sum you demand. Vane babbled frantically, words spilling out in a rushed, panicked stream. Silence. Su Qingli spoke in a quiet tone laced with frigid menace, instantly sealing Vane's mouth shut. His lips trembled uncontrollably, yet he dared not utter another sound. Lin Mu crouched down, studying the terrified gambler who was visibly trembling with fear. Answer my questions truthfully, and no harm will come to you. Do you understand? Vane nodded frantically, careful not to shift his neck an inch for fear of slicing himself open on the sword edge. First question. Where can blood sacks be refined into augmented alchemical cards within Ironspine City? Vane stared blankly, clearly unprepared for this line of questioning. The alchemical workshops located in District East 3 right along the boundary of the mid-level urban zone. The perimeter is heavily guarded. Ordinary civilians are strictly prohibited from approaching the premises. If you're planning to target the workshops, it is impossible. Layers of sentry posts, automated gun turrets, plus. Vane's voice trailed off when he saw Su Qingli's expression grow icier. Speak only when asked a direct question. Su Qingli stated flatly. Why yes, absolutely, I understand. Vane shrank inward like a frightened turtle. Second question. Where are finished augmented alchemical cards stored after production? Lin Mu continued his interrogation. The Council Vault. Workshops ship completed inventory to the vault via escorted monthly convoys traveling through restricted supply corridors. The vault is the most secure location in the entire city. Its walls are constructed from triple-layer military armor steel, protected by a 16-digit mechanical cipher paired with biometric gene locks, and garrisoned by at minimum an entire platoon of augmented warriors. Not even a fly could infiltrate the facility undetected. Vane caught himself rambling excessively mid-sentence and clamped his mouth shut, his eyes darting around nervously. At the present moment, does a larger stockpile of alchemical cards reside within the workshops or the council vault? Su Qingli pressed for further clarification. Vane wore a pained, troubled expression as he racked his brain. I truly cannot say for certain. Standard protocol mandates shipments occur on the 15th of every month. But I heard patrons drinking at the tavern mentioned deliveries were delayed this month due to the ongoing invader manhunt. That means a backlog of newly manufactured cards is currently being held inside the alchemical workshops. Naturally, the council vault also holds massive stockpiles accumulated over years of production. I have no way of knowing which location contains greater quantities. I am merely a low-level drifter scraping by on the streets with no access to classified municipal data. Vane rushed to defend himself, terrified his response would displease his captors. Lin Mu and Su Qingli shared a mutual glance. While Vane could not confirm which location held more alchemical cards, they had secured critical intelligence regardless. Alchemical workshops situated in District East 3, the council vault housed inside the council tower complex. Plus the delayed shipment schedule, leaving untransported finished inventory stockpiled within the workshops. Final question. Where is the council tower located? The Central District. It sits dead center of the whole city, the tallest skyscraper with a massive gear and fist emblem mounted on its rooftop. The landmark is visible from nearly every corner of Ironspine City. Any local resident can point you toward it without hesitation. Ask me anything else you require, and I will answer honestly if you spare my life. I swear upon the laws of this mobile metropolis to never disclose a word of this conversation to anyone. I rarely keep the oaths I make normally, but I guarantee my word will hold this time. Vane rambled incoherently from sheer terror. Su Qingli sheathed her iron sword and stood upright. Vane sagged with immense relief, only for Lin Mu's palm to press against his nape once more. His body slumped into unconsciousness instantly under perfectly calibrated force. Should we head for the alchemical workshops or the council vault first? Su Qingli secured her blade in its sheath and turned toward Lin Mu. According to this gambler's testimony, both sites hold considerable reserves. However, the council vault contains decades of accumulated inventory, meaning its total stock is undoubtedly far larger. Moreover, the high-ranking officials stationed within Council Tower likely possess knowledge regarding the core Matrix's whereabouts. Lin Mu deliberated aloud. The pair briefly discussed their options and ultimately resolved to target the Council Tower directly. Wasting time traveling back and forth between the workshops and vault served no purpose when they could strike the primary objective head-on. Just as they prepared to exit the abandoned shed, a shrill city-wide alarm blared out of nowhere without warning. Identical to the siren they heard echoing across the wasteland the previous day, the piercing tone reverberated through every corner of the mobile metropolis. A cold, mechanical automated announcement followed immediately afterward. Attention! Attention! Intruders have infiltrated the city. The whole city is elevated to Level 2 martial law. All city garrison troops and security teams are to immediately deploy for street patrols. All residents must cooperate with inspections. Report any suspicious individuals without delay. Repeat, intruders have broken into the city. The alert blared across the city on a relentless loop. Moments later, the streets echoed with the thunder of marching military boots and roaring engine exhaust. Squads of security officers poured out from every corner, cordoning off all major thoroughfares with armored vehicles backing their operation. All residents return to your residences at once. Remain off the streets. Violators will be charged with obstruction of official duties. An officer of the security team stood atop an armored vehicle, shouting through a megaphone. Lin Mu and Su Qingli exchanged a glance. The instant the broadcast sounded, they had already retreated into the shadows of the alley. Quick response. Su Qingli's tone remained cool and detached, yet her brows were drawn tight, fingers resting lightly on the hilt of her iron sword. We only just crossed the trestle bridge, and they've locked down the entire city. Iron Spine City's command network is impressively efficient. Lin Mu leaned against the alley wall. What do we do now? Security forces are swarming every street. A brute force breakout is possible, but it will expose our location. Su Qingli asked. Let's relocate first to plan our next move. Temporary barricades had already been erected at the alley mouth, with security officers going door to door conducting interrogations. Sweeping beams of military flashlights flickered atop buildings across the road. The search had kicked off with a full-scale city lockdown, the highest emergency protocol available. The two retraced their steps hastily, circling multiple secured intersections before halting temporarily inside an abandoned apartment complex. Lin Mu pushed open the window of a third-floor unit and peered outside. Conditions on the streets had deteriorated further. Within his line of sight, no fewer than 3 patrol units roamed back and forth, each composed of a minimum of 10 personnel. Every road junction was sealed with permanent checkpoints, requiring identity verification for anyone entering or exiting the district. We're far too exposed moving across ground level with their men everywhere. Lin Mu shut the window and turned towards Su Qingli. Take the high ground. She spoke only those 2 words. They locked eyes and moved in unison. Lin Mu vaulted out the rear window of the derelict apartment first, pushing off the windowsill to land lightly on the exterior wall. He seized hold of a rusted exterior pipeline, swinging his body upward to scale the wall with the agility of a gecko. Su Qingli followed close behind, her traditional robes billowing softly in the breeze. She lacked Lin Mu's extraordinary physical prowess, but she wielded a refined sword heart. Her iron sword dipped slightly beneath her feet, lifting her steadily skyward as she quickly closed the gap between herself and Lin Mu. The pair traversed the building facades with effortless ease and soon reached the rooftop. Standing at the ledge, they overlooked the sprawling slum district below. The buildings stood uneven and tightly clustered, many separated by gaps narrower than 2 meters. Crisscrossing overhead walkways and pipelines formed a natural aerial network stretching from these low-rise blocks deep into the city core. Traveling above ground is far faster than sticking to the roads. Su Qingli scanned the network of walkways and pipes, mapping out the optimal route. Let's go. Lin Mu surged forward first. He sprinted to the rooftop edge, launching himself across the void to land firmly on the roof of an adjacent building. He rolled forward on impact to disperse momentum and sprinted onward without pause. Su Qingli rode her flying sword in his wake, the blade weaving nimbly between buildings at a speed matching Lin Mu's pace perfectly. The two raced across Iron Spine City's rooftops, leaping from roof to roof, scrambling across aerial walkways, and sliding along industrial pipelines. Patrol units combed the streets far below, while hovering patrol vehicles circled overhead. They moved like phantoms slipping through the cracks of this steel metropolis. When no clear path presented itself, they had no qualms about cutting through private property. Crash. Window glass shattered into shards. Lin Mu rolled to absorb the impact, landing squarely in the living room of a private apartment. Su Qingli drifted through the same broken window atop her sword, brushing flecks of broken glass off her hem upon landing. Both froze the moment they took in the room's interior. It was a modest yet cozy living space. A low table sat in the center, lined with plates of steaming breakfast food. A middle-aged man dressed in loungewear sat at the table, holding a chunk of bread dipped in sauce, poised to take a bite. He heard the commotion and slowly lifted his head, bread still clamped between his teeth. His entire body stiffened as if paused mid-action. Only his eyeballs darted rapidly between Lin Mu and Su Qingli, his mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. Our apologies for the intrusion. Lin Mu nodded politely toward the man. He then threw open a second window on the opposite side of the living room and leaped outside. Su Qingli floated out after him, taking a moment to slide the damaged window shut behind her. The man remained seated at the table, bread still in his mouth, staring at the newly closed window before glancing back at the shattered pane. He sank into stunned silence. Shortly afterward, the pair paused to rest atop an abandoned mechanical repair plant. Su Qingli had expended a great deal of mental energy maintaining her flight and needed a brief reprieve to recover. She leaned against a rusted metal pillar, eyes closed as she regulated her breathing, fine beads of sweat glistening on her forehead beneath the morning sunlight. Lin Mu stood guard beside her, keeping watch over their surroundings. The rooftop afforded an unobstructed view of the tallest structure in the distance, Ironspine City's council hall. Even from afar, the giant emblem of a fist encircled by gears atop its roof was unmistakable. The council hall stood as a cylindrical monolith clad in dark gray armor plating, fitted with sparse, evenly spaced windows. It resembled a military fortress far more than an administrative government building. That is our destination. Su Qingli opened her eyes at some point, following Lin Mu's line of sight. It hardly looks like a government complex. It's built like a stronghold, Lin Mu remarked. Such heavy fortification means this city is far less peaceful than it appears on the surface. Su Qingli replied. Agreed. There would be no need for such defensive architecture otherwise. Lin Mu nodded in assent. Searches continued across the streets, yet the nearest patrol unit was now 2 city blocks away. The droning hover vehicles had also shifted toward another sector. The search parties never anticipated their targets were traversing the rooftops dozens of meters above ground level. I've recovered enough. Let's move out, Lin Mu said. They jumped from the repair plant's rooftop and pressed onward toward the towering council hall at the city's central district, their destination now tantalizingly close. Central District, Ironspine City, Council Hall. Inside the top-floor council chamber, figures lined both sides of an elongated metallic conference table. The assembly included high-rise city garrison officers in crisp formal uniforms, robed technical advisors clad in scholars' garments, and sharply dressed civil servants with meticulously combed hair. Only 12 individuals held official seating positions at the table, the 12 councilors of Ironspine City, each wielding substantial governing authority. They oversaw public security, resource allocation, alchemic foundry operations, and foreign diplomacy, serving as the true rulers of this mobile metropolis with power over the lives of its hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. A heavy, somber mood hung thick over the 12-seated council members. I still cannot wrap my head around this. The speaker was a middle-aged man seated third from the left, wearing a dark gray council robe pinned with the gear and fist insignia. Graying hair framed his deeply furrowed brow. Those 2 intruders were confirmed to carry the city heart relics, yet our tracking system remains non-functional. Nearly an hour has passed since their breach, and the sensory matrix has yielded 0 readings. This is entirely illogical. It is simple logic. They pass the city hearts to their accomplices and carry nothing on their persons, rendering tracking useless. A burly, brutish man across the table retorted. His name was Barlow, director of the Security Bureau. He had pushed his uniform sleeves up to his elbows, revealing scar-covered muscular forearms. He slammed his fist against the table mid-sentence, sloshing water inside the teacups. Director Barlow's theory holds merit. According to Matrix tracking data, the city heart signals are still originating from the ruined city zone. If the relics remain there while the intruders are inside our city walls, there is only one explanation. They left the relics with their allies out in the wasteland. A gaunt man on the right side adjusted his monocle as he spoke, meaning we are operating completely blind. An elderly white-haired man seated to the speaker's left said coldly. His name was Colt, director of the Technology Bureau, with seniority surpassing most present council members. That statement is overly pessimistic, Director Colt. Even without the Matrix, we command 3,000 city garrison soldiers and 2,000 security officers. A citywide lockdown paired with door-to-door searches will inevitably flush them out. Barlow dismissed the concern dismissively. Door-to-door sweeps? Do you have any conception of how many alleyways, buildings, and underground passages span Ironspine City? How long would thousands of men require to comb through every inch? A tall, thin man in gray robes let out a scoff. Anderson, are you intentionally bolstering the enemy's confidence while undermining our own? Barlow's expression darkened sharply. I am merely stating factual reality. For one thing, we have yet to identify the intruder's objective. Anderson sipped tea calmly, his tone unhurried and composed. Their objective? What other goals could trespassers possibly have? Sabotage or theft? Those are the only motives for infiltrators. Barlow waved a hand dismissively. They may be targeting an assassination of key personnel. To be safe, we ought to bolster security around the council building. The youngest counselor, barely 30 years old, cut into the conversation with a trace of nervousness. He shot an involuntary glance toward the chamber doors mid-speech, as if assailants might burst through at any moment. His comment triggered mocking laughter rippling across the chamber. Bolster defenses? Gray, did last night's alert rob you of your sleep? You're talking in your dreams. Barlow roared with laughter, slamming his palm repeatedly against the tabletop. Young Counselor Gray flushed bright red with embarrassment, yet Barlow paid him no heed, continuing his rant. The outer walls of this council hall are reinforced with 3 layers of military-grade armor plating. 2 platoons of augmented warriors guard the main entrance. 3 anti-air autocannons are mounted on the rooftop. 3 encrypted mechanical locks seal the underground tunnels. The 3 surrounding city blocks are designated military exclusion zones, with orders to shoot anyone approaching within 50 meters on sight. Barlow struck the table once for each detail he listed, the entire conference table vibrating loudly by his final declaration. With defenses this robust, those intruders would have to be fools to march straight for the council building. Coming here would be nothing short of walking into a trap. Director Barlow speaks the truth. This council hall boasts the strongest defensive systems across Ironspine City. Even if those 2 outsiders possessed the ability of flight, they would never escape this chamber once inside. Another counselor seated beside Barlow voiced his agreement. Furthermore, there are only 2 of them. What damage could a pair of individuals inflict? Even if they foolishly charged this building, our augmented guards could beat them into pulp with minimal effort. A third attendee chimed in. I am far more curious about their actual target. The alchemic foundry? Or the water treatment plant? Why would they target the water facility? Destroying our water supply would offer them no tangible benefit. Who can say? They might aim to spark widespread chaos and slip away amid the turmoil. Escape the city? They went through the trouble of infiltrating our walls only to flee again. What purpose would that serve? Then theft must be their motive. The alchemic foundry stockpiled at least 20 refined alchemic enhancement cards awaiting transport this month. They are likely here for those. 20? Where did you get that number? I heard monthly output was limited to 15 cards. Your intelligence is outdated. The foundry delivered a fresh batch 2 days ago, bringing the total to exactly 20. Enough. The 2-word command was spoken in a quiet tone, yet silence crashed over the council chamber instantly. Every head turned toward the speaker's high-backed metallic chair at the far end of the long table. The speaker appeared roughly 60 years old, with unremarkable facial features. Still, his pale blue sunken eyes compelled every person who met his gaze to lower their heads instinctively. We can investigate the failed relic tracking system and the intruder's purpose after we capture them. Our top priority right now is his sentence cut off abruptly, not from completion, but from a deafening detonation shaking the entire council hall. Teacups spilled water across the table's surface, ceiling chandeliers swayed violently, and council members grabbed the table edges for stability. An explosion? Where did that blast originate? Chaos erupted throughout the chamber. Barlow shot to his feet first, grabbing his communication device off the table. Guards, report the situation outside immediately. Static crackled harshly over the receiver, followed by fragmented shouting from the sentry. Report, Director. The main gate. There's an explosive bang. The transmission went dead. A second explosion boomed louder and closer than the first, plaster dust showering down from the chamber walls. The main gate. They're attacking the council compound. They've lost their minds. Only 2 people dare assault council headquarters? Have the blood beasts rotted their sense? An elderly counselor slammed his fist against the table, his voice booming over the commotion. Barlow, where are your security officers? Where are your garrison troops? Have your 2 platoons of guards been eliminated already? Director Colt dabbed cold sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief, shouting furiously at Barlow. Reinforcements are mobilizing as we speak. Backup units will arrive within 3 minutes. Barlow slammed buttons frantically on his communicator to issue emergency orders, roaring toward the chamber doors. Secure the entrance. Do not allow a single living thing to breach this building. 3 minutes? They have already reached the front doors. What happened to your augmented soldiers stationed outside? Rare panic tinged Anderson's voice. Impossible. 2 full platoons of augmented warriors could not be overwhelmed this quickly, not even by Tier 10 enhanced combatants. Barlow's face flushed a mix of rage and terror. A string of dull impacts echoed against the thick metal entrance doors of the council chamber moments later. The sound of fists colliding with flesh mixed sharply with sickening cracks of splintering bone, followed by heavy bodies slamming against the metal walls before sliding limply to the floor. The rhythmic noise drew nearer, akin to the slow footsteps of closing doom. Dead silence blanketed the council room, so quiet one could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breath. Barlow's hand drifted to the service pistol holstered at his waist. Colt froze mid-wipe with his handkerchief, oblivious when the cloth slipped from his grasp onto the table. Anderson's hand hovered inches from his monocle, fingers trembling uncontrollably. The youngest Counselor Gray had huddled deep within his chair, his face ashen white. Then came a thunderous crash. A single fist slammed into the reinforced door. The three-layer military armor plating buckled inward sharply under the blow, forming a distinct fist-shaped indentation. Metal panels warped and split along the impact zone, mounting bolts shearing free one after another to clatter across the council floor. The supposedly impenetrable council entrance crumpled like thin parchment paper. A second devastating punch landed. Boom. The entire massive metal door tore free from its frame, surging inward with a crushing shockwave. The heavy metal slab gouged a deep trench across the floor, overturning half the conference table and sending multiple counselors tumbling backward along with their chairs. Thick dust billowed through the ruined doorway as a young man stepped into view. He was barely in his early 20s, of average build with an unimposing facial appearance. Yet his mere presence pressed an oppressive, soul-deep sense of suffocation onto every person in the room. A second figure emerged behind him, robes flowing elegantly with each step, long hair cascading down her back, her refined features resembling a painting brought to life. An iron sword hovered perpetually in orbit beside her form. Two people, truly only two people. Anderson muttered in stunned disbelief. Barlow recovered his senses first. He scrambled upright from the floor, drawing his pistol and aiming directly at the young man in the doorway. "You damned trespassing rats. How dare you storm the council hall? Do you have any idea who we are? We govern Ironspine City." He never finished his sentence. Linmu moved in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he crossed the full length of the council chamber to stand directly before Barlow. He pinched the barrel of the pistol between two fingers, bending the steel barrel into a twisted mess as if it were soft noodle dough. "Continue speaking." Linmu stared at him, his tone utterly calm and flat. Barlow's mouth gaped open, yet not a single syllable escaped his throat. Director Colt struggled back to his feet, glancing between the wrecked steel door and the mangled service pistol. He forced his posture upright despite his visible fear. "City garrison reinforcements are en route. You cannot escape confinement. Surrender now, and the council may negotiate leniency for your crimes." His voice remained steady on the surface, though his hanging hands shook violently without restraint. Linmu did not spare him a single glance. Su Qingli swept her gaze across every person in the conference hall before fixing her eyes on the rear exit. Several counselors were hunched over, attempting to slip out through the back door. They kept their bodies low and stepped with utmost quietness, convinced their movements had gone unnoticed. Su Qingli's eyes sharpened. Her iron sword flew free from her grasp. A streak of silvery light flashed across the hall, piercing the back of the counselor standing closest to the back door and bursting out through his chest. The man froze stiff on the spot. He stared down at the bloody hole torn through his torso, his lips twitching as if trying to form words. In the end, he collapsed heavily onto the floor, twitched once or twice, and fell completely motionless. A deathly hush descended further over the conference hall. It was only at this moment that the counselors truly grasped they had become prisoners. Some stood gaping with their jaws hanging open. Others froze mid-gesture with hands suspended in the air. A few stumbled backward only to slam into the wall behind them. The poise they had carried while debating around the table, the contempt they'd held for the two insignificant intruders, had now dissolved entirely into raw terror. Linmu walked past the crowd without pause and headed straight for the speaker's seat. The speaker of Ironspire City remained seated in the tall metallic high-backed chair, his slate-blue eyes locked firmly on Linmu as his hands gripped the armrests tightly. He had not run, nor crumpled to the ground like the other council members. 60 years of life had taught him that flight and resistance were utterly futile in this situation. Linmu stopped before him and looked down from his towering height. He then grabbed the man by his collar and hauled him roughly out of the chair. Without another glance at the fallen speaker, Linmu turned and settled into the high-backed metal seat himself. The counselors who once held lofty positions dared not even breathe too loudly. Rooted to their spots, they could only steal wary glances toward Linmu and Su Qingli. Most of their wary attention was fixed on the flying sword hovering steadily beside Su Qingli. Each man feared he would be the next victim pierced through the heart by the blade. Though some still harbored selfish schemes beneath their fear, every single one maintained an outward show of obedience. Now, Linmu's gaze drifted over every person present, his voice soft, yet crystal clear to every ear in the room. "I speak. You listen." On the third floor of an abandoned high-rise building, Bulk stood by the window, switching to his third radio channel. "Has the third squad pulled back as well?" What is the state of the northern defensive line? His voice was lowered, yet thick anxiety lingered in every word he spoke. Static, explosions, and frantic shouts crackled through the radio speaker in fragmented bursts. Boss, the northern line can't hold out. The city guard rolled out 3 armored personnel carriers. Our crude homemade bombs cannot breach their armored plating. 7 of our men have already been wounded or killed. Damn it! Bulk cursed under his breath and slammed his palm hard against the window frame. He spun around to face Chen Lu, who sat at a table polishing a machete with a clean cloth. Lu, the situation is spiraling downhill. Forces from Black Sand City and Ironspire City have struck some kind of agreement. They've stopped fighting each other and united to hunt us down. 3 of the defensive outposts we set up around the derelict metropolis have been breached. If this keeps up, their troops will reach our core hideout soon. Chen Lu's polishing motion faltered briefly, then resumed at its original steady pace. How much time do we have before they get here? She asked. Her tone calm and composed. Half an hour at most. Lu, we should retreat to the underground district right now. The tangled terrain there will neutralize their large troop formations, letting us drag out a prolonged fight against them. Bulk gritted his teeth as he spoke. Chen Lu did not reply immediately, continuing to wipe down the edge of her machete. While her exterior remained collected with the poised bearing of a group leader in full control, panic surged wildly inside her mind. Half an hour, 3 defensive lines fallen. A coordinated manhunt led by regular soldiers from 2 cities. Help me, Senior. I cannot handle a crisis of this scale alone. Her eyes drifted sideways of their own accord. When Wantong stood beside the window, quietly observing the chaos unfolding outside. Sensing Chen Lu's stare, she turned her head and gave a subtle nod. That tiny gesture calmed the roiling panic in Chen Lu's chest like a gentle hand pressing down turbulent waters. She drew in a deep breath, slung the machete over her shoulder, propped one leg up on the table frame, and tilted her chin toward Bulk. Retreat for what? Senior left this place in my care, and I won't let him down. Half an hour is more than enough time to deal with the enemy units that have pushed through our defenses. She slammed the blade against the tabletop to emphasize her words. You're absolutely right, Lu. We haven't gotten a proper fight in since morning. These reckless soldiers are perfect practice dummies for us. Shi Ming puffed out his chest, his defined muscles bulging prominently beneath his tank top. Damn right. They dare march onto our territory? They've got another thing coming. Shi Yong cracked his knuckles with sharp popping sounds. Beat them back. Crush them all. Shirgan hopped excitedly on the spot, his shaved head glinting under the flickering indoor light. Bulk stared at the 3 brawny men champing at the bit for battle, then at the twin-tailed girl lounging casually with her legs crossed atop the table. Utterly baffled. Were these people out of their minds? Hundreds of trained regular soldiers backed by armored vehicles were closing in, and they only had a handful of fighters to stand against them. What did they possibly plan to fight with? He opened his mouth to reason with them once more, when an urgent call blared over the radio. Boss, emergency. A detachment of city guards is heading straight for your location. At least 30 troops with an APC in tow. They've pinpointed our command post. The transmission cut out abruptly amid a blast. Bulk's face drained of all color in an instant. Damn it. They found us. Lu, we need to run this instant. 30 armed soldiers plus an armored vehicle is no trivial threat. I'll order my men to hold them off while we slip out the back exit. He tossed his radio onto the table and shot upright from his chair. Run from a handful of enemies? Chen Lu stood and hefted her machete onto her shoulder. Her pleated skirt and twin ribbons fluttered lightly in the morning breeze drifting through the broken windows. It's merely 30 soldiers. We cut them down and the threat disappears. Bulk gaped at her as if staring at someone irrational. Merely 30? These are professional city guards, not mindless pests. Do you have any idea what an APC is? Its heavy caliber autocannon can blow apart half a building wall with a single shot. Didn't we take out 6 hover vehicles yesterday? Chen Lu tilted her head, her large eyes wide with innocent sincerity. Bulk's jaw dropped open even wider. His urgency had made him completely forget that victory from the previous day. But no buts. Shi Ming, Shi Yong, Shirgan, follow me. Chen Lu walked past him, the cold steel spine of her machete glinting sharply. Understood, Lu. The 3 brothers shouted in unison, their voices loud enough to shake dust loose from the ceiling beams. Chen Lu paused at the stairwell and glanced back toward Bulk. Stay here and wait for news if you're unwilling to fight. If you've got the courage, rally your men and follow along. Scavenging leftover weapons and supplies should be simple enough for your group. Bulk's cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment. He had survived 20 harsh years wandering these wastelands, and no one had ever accused him of cowardice, least of all a teenage girl. Bulk, fear nothing. Grab your weapons, everyone. He slapped his thigh hard and drew 2 hunting knives from his waist, roaring his command to his subordinates. Out on the street outside the derelict building, 30 city guard soldiers spread out into standard combat formation. Their charcoal gray combat fatigues blended seamlessly into the surrounding rusted metal ruins, the barrels of their assault rifles sweeping every window and shadowed corner without pause. Further back in the formation, a wheeled armored vehicle advanced slowly forward. Its thick steel hull bore Ironspire City's emblem of a gear wrapped around a clenched fist, and the heavy autocannon mounted on its roof rotated slowly to scan its surroundings. An officer stood beside the APC, gripping a megaphone in one hand. Attention, occupants of the building. You are fully surrounded. Lay down your weapons and surrender. Ironspire City will grant leniency to low-level accomplices who submit voluntarily. Resist arrest, and you will be executed on sight. No response echoed out from within the abandoned structure. Frowning deeply, the officer muttered a quick order into his communication device. He waved his arm, sending 2 squads to circle around the building from the left and right flanks. The remaining soldiers took cover behind the APC, their rifles all aimed squarely at the main entrance. One soldier ducked low to creep toward the front door, his hand raised to hurl a stun grenade inside. Before freezing mid-action, a faint, strange hum reached his ears, akin to glass moments before it shatters. He lifted his head and spotted a thin crack spiderwebbing across the APC's bulletproof windshield. The fissure was no bigger than a fingernail at first, yet spread visibly outward with every passing second. More cracks branched across the glass, covering the entire windshield in a fractured web within mere seconds. Sniper! His warning died unfinished as the windshield exploded inward. The compressed air projectile launched by Wantong, empowered by spectral energy and fueled by 120 points of mental power, tore straight through the reinforced bulletproof glass with effortless ease. Shards of glass sprayed into the driver's compartment, killing both the driver and co-pilot before they could utter a single scream. Immediately afterward, a figure burst out from a third-floor window of the building. Her twin tails sliced clean arcs through the air, her pleated skirt billowing in the morning wind as her machete glinted with cold, killing intent. Right behind her, the 3 burly brothers jumped from a second window, their heavy impacts sending tremors rippling through the pavement below. Attack! Chen Lu activated her spectral energy enhancement and charged forward first. A soldier who had just raised his rifle never got the chance to pull the trigger. Chen Lu's blade sliced cleanly through both the gun barrel and the man's neck. In one fluid motion, his eyes bulged wide, his body stiffening for a heartbeat before he crumpled to the asphalt. City Guard soldier eliminated. EXP plus 20 unsettled, first one. Chen Lu shouted excitedly, spinning backward to land another strike without slowing her pace. City Guard soldier eliminated. EXP plus 20 unsettled, second. The Sher brothers wreaked even greater havoc across the battlefield. Sherming locked his arms around one soldier's torso and swung the man like a sandbag, slamming his body forcefully into a nearby brick wall and sending chunks of masonry crumbling to the ground. Shi Yong drove a powerful fist into another soldier's chest. The victim flew backward like a snapped kite, crashing into 2 of his fellow troopers and knocking them to the ground. Shirgan leaped onto the roof of a military jeep and pounced down onto 3 soldiers reloading their magazines. Fierce as a wild tiger charging into a flock of sheep. Ha ha ha, this is exhilarating. Chase us down, will you? Corner us? Take this. Shirgan laughed loudly amid his assault, his voice echoing across the empty street. The city guards were completely overwhelmed by the sudden onslaught. Though each soldier had undergone rigorous formal military training, all that discipline meant nothing against foes with superhuman physical capabilities. Chen Lu was currently level 13. With spectral energy active, her strength stat rose to 48 points and her agility reached 51 points. Her blade strokes moved too swiftly for ordinary humans to track with their eyes. Coupled with the 3 Sher brothers, who possessed a B-rank talent that doubled their physical strength, the 30-soldier unit lost nearly half its numbers in less than 30 seconds. The surviving troops stumbled backward in blind panic. Some discarded their firearms and fled without hesitation. Others cowered behind the APC and dared not show their faces, while the rest screamed into their radios requesting emergency reinforcements. Hold formation. Stand your ground. There are only 4 hostiles. The officer roared hoarsely, yet tremors of fear were unmistakable in his shouting voice. At that exact moment, when Wantong struck again from the upper floor, she extended her index finger toward the heavy machine gun. swiveling to target their position behind the officer. Channeling 120 mental points into another compressed air shot, she fired. Bang! The heavy machine gun toppled sideways. Though not fully destroyed, it was rendered inoperable for the time being. Every drop of color drained from the officer's face. Retreat. Fall back immediately, he screamed out his final order. The dozen or so remaining guards abandoned their wounded comrades and military gear, scrambling frantically toward the far end of the street. Several even discarded their rifles in their desperate rush to escape. The APC sat abandoned in the middle of the road, its driver's compartment still littered with bloodied glass shards. Chen Lu stood amid scattered bullet casings and bloodstains, flicking the blood off her machete before slinging the weapon back over her shoulder. "Balk, come collect the spoils of war," she called toward the abandoned building, her tone tinged with lingering battle excitement. The main door of the building creaked open a narrow crack. Balk peeked his head out, his slate-blue eyes scanning the fallen guards, the shattered windshield of the armored vehicle, and the fleeing remnants of the enemy squad. He shoved the door wide open and strode outside without hesitation. "Everyone out here. Clear the battlefield. Gather all usable ammunition and weapons. Check if the APC is functional. If it runs, we're towing it away." Balk spoke far louder than he had earlier, his back held straight with newfound resolve. Wasteland scavengers poured out of the building in droves. Some looted magazines and grenades from the fallen soldiers. A crowd clustered around the APC to inspect its damage, while a handful chased down fleeing guards to finish them off. Balk walked over to Chun Lu and bowed far deeper than he had in any prior meeting between them. "I misjudged you earlier, Lu. Whatever target you mark for battle, my men and I will follow without the slightest hesitation." There was no trace of tentative flattery in his tone, replaced by genuine, heartfelt respect. "Quit bowing every 2 minutes. You're not working for Victor." Chen Lu waved a dismissive hand, even as she could not suppress the upward tug at the corners of her mouth. While Balk directed his scavengers to clean up the battlefield, Chen Lu opened her personal status panel in secret to review her gains. She had personally taken down 11 guards in the recent skirmish. Combined with the EXP accumulated from earlier minor fights, she activated her critical strike proxy for total settlement. 11 city guard soldiers eliminated EXP gained. 20 times 11 is equal to 220 unsettled settle accumulated EXP now? Yes/no yes. Processing EXP settlement bond effect. Critical strike EXP conversion activated current favorability with bond target 64. Random critical multiplier range. 164x rolled critical multiplier for this settlement. 30x base EXP value. 220 EXP after critical multiplier. 6600 EXP split equally talent holder Lin Mu. 3300 EXP gained bonded user Chen Lu. 3300 EXP gained. Numbers on the status panel surged upward rapidly. Player level up LV.13 LV.14 level up reward. All stats plus 3 LV.14 LV.15 level up reward. All stats plus 3 current level. LV.15 strength. 3238 agility. 3440 vitality. 3339 mental power. 3440. I've hit level 15. 2 level ups in one go. Chen Lu's heart raced with elation, though she quickly composed her facial expression to match her established authoritative leader persona. She coughed softly to regain a calm demeanor, yet her bright, sparkling eyes betrayed her true excitement. Shiming jogged over from the APC, streaks of motor oil smudged across his shaved head, his face glowing with triumph. "Lu, the APC is fully operational. The engine and weapon systems are intact. Only the autocannon mounting frame broke. I've sent Shirgan to reattach the ammunition feed lines. This vehicle is a priceless asset. One shot from its cannon can collapse an entire wall." He gestured wildly with his thick arms, nearly knocking over a scavenger sorting bullet casings beside him. "The APC is yours, 3 brothers to command. Riding around in an armored vehicle ought to satisfy your craving for imposing firepower, right?" Chen Lu spoke generously and lifted her hand to pat Shiming's shoulder. Shiming stood far taller than her, so she stood on her tiptoes and settled for patting his bulging bicep instead. "It's perfect. Absolutely incredible." Shiming's shaved head practically glowed with delight. "Of course it is. Following Lu's lead always brings us great rewards." Shirgan jogged over carrying the reconnected ammunition belt. The metal chain coiled thickly around his powerful forearm like a metallic serpent. "Exactly. No one beats our Lu." Shiyong poked his head out from the APC cockpit, flecks of broken glass still stuck to his cheeks. Bulk watched the three towering men crowd around Chun Lu, showering her with praise like eager schoolchildren, the corners of his mouth twitching in quiet amusement.